Thank you for all your support. We would love to know which part of the world you are visiting us from. In the beginning, when the Almighty breathed life into Adam, the first man upon the earth, he established a lineage that would carry the divine spark through generations of humanity. The sacred genealogy recorded in the 5th chapter of Genesis reveals a chain of righteous men, each bearing the image of God, each walking in varying degrees of divine favor. Yet among all these patriarchs of the antediluvian world, one name stands apart, shrouded in mystery and divine favor: Enoch, the 7th from Adam. The sacred text declares, "And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth." Through Seth the righteous line continued, for it was through Seth that men began to call upon the name of the Lord. The genealogy flows like a sacred river. Adam begat Seth, Seth begat Enos, Enos begat Cainan, Cainan begat Mahalaleel, Mahalaleel begat Jared, and Jared begat Enoch. This numerical position, 7th from Adam, carries profound significance in the sacred mysteries. 7, the number of divine completion and perfection, marks Enoch as chosen for a special destiny. The ancient sages understood that nothing in the divine record is without purpose, and the placement of Enoch as the 7th patriarch speaks to his predestined role in the cosmic order. 7 days of creation, 7 spirits before the throne, 7 churches, 7 seals. The number 7 resonates throughout the sacred writings as the signature of divine completeness. The name Enoch itself carries deep meaning in the ancient Hebrew tongue. Derived from the root kanak, it signifies dedicated, initiated, or trained. From his very naming, Enoch was marked as one set apart, dedicated to divine service, initiated into mysteries beyond mortal comprehension. His father Jared, whose name means descent, named his son with prophetic insight, perhaps understanding that this child would be dedicated to purposes far beyond earthly existence. The lineage that produced Enoch was one marked by longevity and divine blessing. These antediluvian patriarchs lived for centuries, their extended years allowing them to accumulate wisdom and maintain direct connection with the divine revelation given to Adam. Jared, Enoch's father, lived 962 years, witnessing the unfolding of human history across nearly a millennium. Into this world of extended lifespans and preserved divine knowledge, Enoch was born, a child destined to surpass even the remarkable longevity of his ancestors through an entirely different path. The sacred scriptures provide a remarkable testimony concerning Enoch's character. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This simple yet profound statement contains within it the essence of Enoch's extraordinary nature. While other patriarchs are described as living godly lives, only Enoch receives the distinctive declaration that he walked with God. This phrase, repeated twice in the biblical account, emphasizes the unique intimacy of Enoch's relationship with the Almighty. To walk with God implies a continuous, intimate fellowship that goes beyond occasional prayer or worship. It suggests a life lived in constant communion with the divine, where every step is taken in conscious awareness of God's presence, every decision made in consultation with divine wisdom, every breath drawn in acknowledgement of divine sovereignty. The Hebrew word halak, translated as walked, indicates not a single journey but a habitual lifestyle, a continuous pattern of life lived in divine companionship. The ancient Jewish traditions elaborate on this walking with God, describing Enoch as one who achieved such perfect righteousness that the boundary between the human and divine began to dissolve. The Talmudic sages speak of Enoch as one who never experienced sin, whose heart was so pure that it reflected the divine nature perfectly. Unlike other mortals who struggled with temptation and failure, Enoch maintained such unwavering faithfulness that he became a living bridge between earth and heaven. This righteousness was not merely personal piety, but cosmic significance. In an age when the descendants of Cain were building cities and developing technologies apart from God, when the sons of God were taking wives from among the daughters of men in forbidden unions, when violence and corruption were beginning to fill the earth, Enoch stood as a beacon of divine light. His righteousness served as a witness against the growing darkness, his faithfulness a rebuke to those who turned away from the path of divine fellowship. The Book of Enoch, though not included in the canonical scriptures, provides additional insight into his character. It describes him as a preacher of righteousness who proclaimed divine judgment against the fallen angels and their corrupting influence upon humanity. Far from living in isolation, Enoch engaged with the spiritual battles of his age, standing boldly against the forces of darkness that sought to corrupt the human race. His righteousness was active, militant, uncompromising in its devotion to divine truth. The favor of God upon Enoch manifested in extraordinary ways that set him apart from all other mortals of his generation. While his contemporaries experienced the normal cycles of human existence, birth, growth, struggle, aging, and death, Enoch's life followed a different trajectory entirely. The divine favor upon him was so complete that it transcended the natural laws governing human existence. The sacred text reveals that Enoch lived 365 years before his translation, a number that corresponds to the days of the solar year, suggesting a life lived in perfect harmony with divine order and cosmic rhythm. Unlike other patriarchs who lived for centuries longer, Enoch's comparatively brief earthly sojourn was not a limitation, but a divine appointment. Every one of those 365 years was lived in such perfect communion with God that quantity was transformed into quality, duration into intensity. During these years of divine fellowship, Enoch received revelations and visions that would echo through the ages. He was granted sight into the heavenly realms, shown the throne of God, given understanding of cosmic mysteries that remained hidden from other mortals. The ancient writings describe his journeys in the Spirit, his conversations with angels, his reception of divine knowledge concerning the past, present, and future of creation. Enoch's prophetic calling emerged from this intimate fellowship with God. He became a voice of divine warning to his generation, proclaiming the coming judgment upon wickedness, while simultaneously revealing the glorious destiny awaiting the righteous. His prophecies, quoted even in the New Testament by the Apostle Jude, declared, "Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him." This prophetic ministry was not merely predictive, but transformative. Through Enoch's words, the divine will was communicated to humanity, the standards of righteousness were maintained, and the hope of divine redemption was preserved. His prophecies bridged the gap between the original revelation given to Adam and the coming revelations that would be given to Noah, Abraham, Moses, and the later prophets. The divine favor upon Enoch also manifested in his role as a father. The sacred text records that he begat Methuselah, whose name prophetically declared, "When he dies, it shall come," a reference to the coming flood. Through divine revelation, Enoch understood that his son's lifespan would serve as a countdown to divine judgment, and he named him accordingly. This demonstrates how even Enoch's family relationships were woven into the tapestry of divine purpose and prophetic revelation. The phrase "walked with God" requires deeper contemplation to understand its full significance in Enoch's life and destiny. In the ancient Hebrew understanding, walking represented not just physical movement, but a complete way of life, an entire orientation of being. When applied to one's relationship with God, it signified a life lived in continuous awareness of divine presence, constant submission to divine will, and ongoing communion with divine wisdom. The concept of walking with God implies equality of pace, neither running ahead of God's will nor lagging behind his purposes, but maintaining perfect synchronization with divine timing and direction. Enoch achieved this remarkable harmony, living each day in such perfect alignment with God's heart that his human will became perfectly merged with the divine will. This was not a loss of personality, but a fulfillment of humanity's original design, to be in perfect harmony with the Creator. This walking with God also suggests intimacy and fellowship. Just as two friends walking together share conversation, thoughts, and companionship, Enoch's relationship with God was characterized by ongoing dialogue and communion. The barriers that typically separate the human from the divine, sin, fear, spiritual darkness, were absent in Enoch's life. He lived in the unbroken fellowship that Adam had known before the fall, perhaps even achieving a greater intimacy through his conscious choice to maintain this relationship despite the corrupting influences of his age. The duration of this walking is significant. The text states that Enoch walked with God for 300 years after the birth of his son Methuselah. 3 centuries of unbroken divine fellowship, 300 years of continuous spiritual communion, 300 years of perfect alignment with divine will. This was not a momentary experience or a seasonal spiritual awakening, but a sustained lifestyle that spanned multiple generations of human experience. During these centuries of walking with God, Enoch was being prepared for a destiny unlike any other mortal. Each day of fellowship was transforming him. Each moment of divine communion was changing his very nature. The process was gradual but inexorable. Enoch was being prepared for translation from mortality to immortality, from earthly existence to heavenly reality, from human nature to angelic glory. The ancient mystical traditions speak of this transformation as a gradual deification, where Enoch's human nature was increasingly infused with divine nature until the distinction between the two became minimal. His body was transformed from flesh to spirit. His mind was expanded to accommodate divine knowledge. His heart was purified to reflect divine love perfectly. This was not magic or fantasy, but the natural result of sustained divine fellowship. Enoch's role as father to Methuselah reveals another dimension of his extraordinary character and divine calling. The birth of Methuselah marked a significant turning point in Enoch's spiritual journey, for it was after this event that the sacred text explicitly states he walked with God for 300 years. The birth of his son seemed to catalyze an even deeper level of divine fellowship and spiritual understanding. The name Methuselah, as understood by the ancient Hebrew scholars, carries prophetic significance. When he dies, it shall come, or his death shall bring it. Through divine revelation, Enoch understood that his son's lifespan would serve as a divine countdown to the great flood that would cleanse the earth of its corruption. This knowledge transformed Enoch's understanding of his role in the cosmic drama. He was not merely a righteous individual, but a crucial link in God's plan for humanity's redemption and judgment. The responsibility of raising a son whose very name prophesied global judgment must have weighed heavily upon Enoch's heart. Yet, this burden drove him deeper into divine fellowship, seeking wisdom and understanding for his role as father to one whose life would measure the patience of God toward human wickedness. Every year of Methuselah's life was a year of divine grace extended to humanity, a year of opportunity for repentance and righteousness. Through his son, Enoch learned lessons about divine mercy and justice that perhaps could not have been learned any other way. Watching Methuselah grow from infancy to manhood, seeing him establish his own family and live his own long life, Enoch witnessed the unfolding of divine patience across centuries. The God who could have brought judgment immediately instead chose to extend mercy for nearly a millennium, allowing time for human hearts to turn from wickedness to righteousness. Enoch's relationship with Methuselah also reveals the balance between heavenly calling and earthly responsibility. Despite his extraordinary spiritual experiences and divine fellowship, Enoch remained a devoted father, fulfilling his earthly duties while simultaneously living in heavenly communion. This balance would become crucial in understanding his ultimate destiny, one who could bridge earth and heaven because he had faithfully served in both realms. The ancient traditions suggest that Enoch shared his spiritual experiences and divine revelations with his son, training him in the ways of righteousness and divine fellowship. Methuselah, in turn, became the longest-lived human being in recorded history, living 969 years. Some scholars suggest this extraordinary longevity was itself a divine blessing, ensuring that the witness of Enoch's righteousness would be preserved through his son's testimony across nearly a millennium of human history. The world into which Enoch was born and in which he lived his extraordinary life was vastly different from the world that followed the Great Flood. This antediluvian period was characterized by extended human lifespans, preserved divine knowledge, and the ongoing influence of supernatural beings upon human affairs. Understanding this context is crucial to appreciating the significance of Enoch's righteousness and his unique calling. In Enoch's time, the memory of Adam was still relatively fresh. The first man had lived 930 years, and his influence on early human civilization was profound and direct. The divine knowledge given to Adam, understanding of creation, dominion over nature, intimate knowledge of God's character and will, was passed down through the generations with remarkable accuracy. This preserved revelation provided the foundation for Enoch's own spiritual development and divine fellowship. However, this same period also witnessed the beginning of humanity's great apostasy. The descendants of Cain had established cities and developed technologies, but they had done so apart from divine guidance, creating the first secular civilization. The intermarriage between the sons of God and the daughters of men had introduced supernatural corruption into the human race, producing giants and heroes of renown whose influence was leading humanity away from divine truth. Into this context of preserved divine knowledge and growing apostasy, Enoch emerged as a prophetic voice and righteous witness. His life served as a demonstration that intimate fellowship with God remained possible despite the corrupting influences of his age. While others were being drawn away by the allure of secular achievement or supernatural temptation, Enoch maintained his focus on divine truth and righteousness. The contrast between Enoch and his contemporaries was stark and intentional. While others pursued earthly fame, power, and pleasure, Enoch pursued divine fellowship. While others accumulated wealth and built monuments to their own glory, Enoch built a relationship with God that would transcend earthly existence entirely. While others compromised with the growing darkness of their age, Enoch maintained perfect righteousness and served as a beacon of divine light. Enoch's witness during this period was both passive and active. Passively, his very existence and character served as a rebuke to the wickedness of his generation. The sight of a man living in perfect fellowship with God reminded others of what they had lost and what they could still regain through repentance and faith. Actively, Enoch proclaimed divine truth and coming judgment, warning his contemporaries of the consequences of their rebellion while offering them the hope of divine mercy. The effectiveness of Enoch's witness is demonstrated by the fact that his righteousness was so complete and his fellowship with God so intimate that he was translated from earthly existence without experiencing death. This extraordinary event served as the ultimate validation of his message and character. God himself bore witness to Enoch's righteousness by removing him from the earth in a manner that no other mortal would experience until the prophet Elijah. One of the most remarkable aspects of Enoch's life and ministry was his prophetic confrontation with the fallen angels who had corrupted the earth. The ancient writings describe Enoch as receiving divine commission to proclaim judgment against these rebellious celestial beings who had abandoned their proper estate and had taken human wives, producing the Nephilim, the giants who filled the earth with violence and corruption. The Book of Enoch, though not canonical, provides detailed accounts of this prophetic ministry. According to these ancient texts, Enoch was called to serve as a divine messenger to the fallen angels, proclaiming their doom and the consequences of their rebellion. This was no ordinary prophetic assignment. Enoch was commissioned to confront supernatural beings whose power and influence far exceeded anything merely human. The fallen angels, led by figures such as Semjaza and Azazel, had revealed forbidden knowledge to humanity, the arts of war, the making of weapons, the secrets of cosmetics and jewelry, the practice of abortion, and various forms of divination and magic. These revelations had accelerated human corruption and had introduced supernatural elements into human civilization that were never intended by the divine order. Enoch's prophetic ministry addressed these corruptions directly. Through divine revelation, Enoch understood the cosmic significance of this angelic rebellion. The fallen angels were not merely individual rebels, but represented a systematic attack upon the divine order itself. Their actions threatened to corrupt the human race beyond redemption, to pollute the genetic line through which the promised Messiah would come, and to establish a counterfeit kingdom that would rival God's sovereignty over creation. Enoch's confrontation with these fallen beings required extraordinary spiritual authority and divine protection. He was not merely delivering a human opinion or moral judgment, but was serving as the mouthpiece of divine justice itself. The words he spoke carried the weight of heaven behind them, and the judgments he pronounced were backed by the full power of the Almighty. The ancient texts describe Enoch as being transported in spirit to the very presence of these fallen angels, delivering his prophetic message directly to them despite their supernatural power and intimidating presence. This required courage that could only come from complete trust in divine protection and absolute certainty in his divine commission. Enoch's human frailty was overshadowed by divine authority, his mortal limitations transcended by heavenly power. The content of Enoch's prophecies against the fallen angels was comprehensive and devastating. He proclaimed their eternal doom, their exclusion from divine mercy, their coming imprisonment in chains of darkness until the final judgment. He declared that their corruption of the earth would be answered by divine judgment through flood, that their giant offspring would be destroyed, and that their influence over human affairs would be terminated by divine intervention. Throughout his extraordinary life, Enoch served as a crucial link in the preservation and transmission of divine knowledge from the antediluvian world to subsequent generations. The extended lifespans of the early patriarchs allowed for the accumulation and preservation of vast amounts of wisdom and revelation, and Enoch became a particularly important custodian of this sacred knowledge. The divine knowledge available in Enoch's time included not only the original revelations given to Adam, but also the ongoing communications from God through various means: direct conversation, angelic visitation, prophetic vision, and spiritual inspiration. This knowledge encompassed understanding of creation's purpose, humanity's divine destiny, the nature of good and evil, the cosmic conflict between light and darkness, and the ultimate plan of divine redemption. Enoch's unique relationship with God had positioned him to receive additional revelations that went beyond what had been given to previous generations. His prophetic visions included scenes of the heavenly throne room, understanding of angelic hierarchies, knowledge of cosmic geography, insight into the mechanisms of divine judgment, and revelation of future events extending to the end of time itself. The preservation of this knowledge was crucial for several reasons. First, it maintained continuity between the original divine revelation and the revelations that would be given to future generations. Second, it provided a standard by which the growing apostasy of the antediluvian world could be measured and judged. Third, it offered hope for divine redemption, even in the face of increasing human corruption. Enoch's method of preserving this knowledge involved both oral tradition and written record. The ancient texts suggest that Enoch was the first human being to write extensively, recording his visions and revelations in books that would be preserved for future generations. These writings included detailed accounts of his heavenly journeys, his conversations with angels, his visions of divine judgment, and his understanding of cosmic mysteries. The transmission of this knowledge required careful selection of worthy recipients. Enoch chose his son Methuselah as his primary successor in this regard, training him in the sacred mysteries and entrusting him with the preservation of divine revelation. Through Methuselah, this knowledge would be passed to Lamech and then to Noah, ensuring that the divine wisdom of the antediluvian world would survive the flood and be available to the post-flood world. The scope of knowledge entrusted to Enoch was encyclopedic in nature. It included astronomical knowledge, understanding of the movement of celestial bodies, the calendar of seasons, the significance of cosmic cycles. It included geographical knowledge, the layout of the earth, the location of paradise, the boundaries of the inhabited world. It included historical knowledge, the account of creation, the fall of man, the rebellion of angels, the development of human civilization. The process by which Enoch was gradually transformed from mortal man to immortal being was not sudden but gradual, occurring over the course of his 300 years of walking with God after the birth of Methuselah. This transformation was both physical and spiritual, involving changes to his very nature that prepared him for his ultimate translation from earth to heaven. The physical transformation began with subtle changes that reflected his spiritual condition. The ancient texts describe Enoch's appearance as becoming increasingly luminous, his countenance reflecting the divine glory with which he communed daily. His body, originally formed from earthly dust like all humans, began to take on characteristics more suited to celestial existence, becoming lighter, more refined, less bound by the limitations of ordinary flesh. This physical transformation was accompanied by an expansion of mental and spiritual capacities. Enoch's mind was gradually opened to comprehend mysteries that were beyond normal human understanding. His memory was enhanced to retain vast amounts of divine revelation without confusion or error. His perception was sharpened to discern spiritual realities that remained hidden to other mortals. The spiritual transformation involved the gradual purification of Enoch's nature from all traces of sin and corruption. While Enoch had maintained righteousness throughout his life, this process went beyond moral purity to achieve actual spiritual perfection. Every aspect of his being, thought, emotion, will, desire, was brought into perfect alignment with divine nature. The transformation also involved the development of capabilities that transcended normal human limitations. Enoch began to experience visions and spiritual transportation that allowed him to journey beyond the physical world into heavenly realms. He developed the ability to communicate with angels and to understand celestial languages. He gained insight into the workings of creation that enabled him to serve as an intermediary between heaven and earth. The gradual nature of this transformation was intentional and merciful. A sudden change from mortality to immortality would have been traumatic and overwhelming. Instead, God prepared Enoch gradually, allowing him to adjust to each new level of spiritual reality before advancing to the next. This patient process ensured that Enoch's essential humanity was preserved even as he was elevated to angelic status. The transformation process also served as a model and promise for all humanity. Through Enoch's experience, God demonstrated that the corruption introduced by sin was not permanent or irreversible. Human nature could be restored to its original design, and even elevated beyond its original limitations through sustained fellowship with God and complete submission to divine will. As the transformation neared completion, Enoch became increasingly aware of his approaching translation. The divine fellowship that had sustained him for centuries was preparing to culminate in a complete change of existence. The man who had walked with God on earth was being prepared to walk with God in heaven, not as a visitor, but as a permanent resident of the celestial realm. Even before his remarkable translation, Enoch's life had established a legacy of righteousness that would influence subsequent generations throughout human history. His example demonstrated that intimate fellowship with God was possible even in a corrupt and fallen world, that human nature could achieve extraordinary spiritual heights through divine grace, and that faithfulness to God would ultimately be rewarded with blessings beyond earthly imagination. The immediate impact of Enoch's legacy was felt within his own family line. His son Methuselah became the longest-lived human in recorded history, suggesting that the divine blessing upon Enoch extended to his descendants. Methuselah's son Lamech received prophetic insight concerning his own son Noah, declaring that Noah would bring comfort and relief from the curse upon the ground. This prophetic tradition, flowing from Enoch through his descendants, helped preserve divine hope even as human wickedness increased. The broader impact of Enoch's legacy extended throughout the antediluvian world. His reputation for righteousness and divine fellowship served as a standing rebuke to the growing corruption of his age. The very existence of such a man demonstrated that the excuses offered by the wicked for their behavior were hollow. If Enoch could maintain perfect righteousness, then righteousness remained a viable choice for all humanity. Enoch's prophetic ministry created a legacy of divine warning that echoed through the generations leading up to the flood. His predictions of coming judgment provided the theological framework for understanding the catastrophe that would eventually destroy the corrupt world. His warnings gave ample opportunity for repentance, ensuring that the coming judgment would be recognized as just and necessary, rather than arbitrary or cruel. The preservation of divine knowledge through Enoch's ministry created a legacy of revealed truth that would survive the flood and influence all subsequent spiritual development. The writings attributed to Enoch, whether authentic or reflecting authentic traditions, preserved crucial insights into the nature of good and evil, the reality of spiritual warfare, the certainty of divine judgment, and the promise of ultimate redemption. Enoch's legacy also established the precedent for divine translation, the possibility that exceptional righteousness could be rewarded with exemption from death itself. This precedent would later be fulfilled in the case of Elijah, and would provide hope for all believers that death is not the final destiny of the righteous. The promise of resurrection and eternal life finds one of its earliest expressions in Enoch's remarkable destiny. The influence of Enoch's legacy extended beyond the immediate context of his own time to provide inspiration and guidance for righteous individuals throughout history. The apostolic writings in the New Testament refer to Enoch as an example of faith and righteousness, demonstrating that his influence continued long after his translation. His life serves as proof that human nature, despite its fallen condition, retains the capacity for extraordinary spiritual achievement through divine grace. In the annals of sacred history, few events are as shrouded in divine mystery as the translation of Enoch. The Hebrew Scriptures record with striking brevity, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." These simple words conceal one of the most profound transformations in all of celestial literature, the elevation of a mortal man to become the mighty angel Metatron, second only to the Almighty himself. The word translation carries within it the weight of divine intervention. Unlike death, which is the common lot of humanity, translation represents a direct intervention by the divine hand, lifting the righteous soul beyond the veil of mortality into the eternal realms. Enoch did not taste death as other men. Instead, he experienced a metamorphosis so complete, so radical, that he ceased to be human and became something entirely other, a being of pure spiritual essence, clothed in the authority of heaven itself. The ancient Hebrew sages understood this transformation as more than mere relocation from earth to heaven. It represented a fundamental change in Enoch's very nature, a divine alchemy that transmuted mortal flesh into immortal spirit, human consciousness into angelic awareness, and earthly limitation into celestial authority. This was not simply a reward for righteousness, but a necessary preparation for the cosmic role that awaited him in the heavenly hierarchy. The mystery deepens when we consider that Enoch's translation was foretold and prepared for throughout his earthly sojourn. His 300 years of walking with God were not merely years of moral excellence, but years of gradual preparation, of increasing illumination, of progressive revelation that would culminate in his complete transformation. Each day of his righteous life was a step closer to the moment when mortality would be swallowed up in immortality, when the human would give way to the divine. The apocryphal literature provides us with detailed accounts of Enoch's celestial journey, accounts that read like the most sublime poetry ever penned by human hand. The first book of Enoch, also known as First Enoch, presents us with visions of breathtaking grandeur, describing realms of light and glory that strain the very limits of human language to express. According to these sacred texts, Enoch's ascension was not a simple transportation from earth to heaven, but rather a progressive journey through multiple levels of celestial reality. He was conducted through 7 heavens, each more glorious than the last, each revealing new aspects of divine truth and cosmic order. In the first heaven, he beheld the angels who govern the elements, wind, rain, and snow. In the second, he witnessed the fallen angels in their place of punishment. The third heaven revealed to him paradise and the tree of life, while the fourth showed him the movements of the sun and moon. As Enoch ascended through the 5th heaven, he encountered the Grigori, the watchers who weep eternally for their brethren who fell to earth and corrupted themselves with the daughters of men. The 6th heaven revealed to him the angels who study the movements of the stars and the changing of the seasons, beings of such wisdom that their knowledge encompasses all the mysteries of time and space. But it was in the 7th heaven, the highest of all, that Enoch's transformation truly began. Here, in the immediate presence of the divine throne, surrounded by seraphim whose voices shake the foundations of creation with their constant praise, Enoch beheld the Ancient of Days seated upon the throne of glory. The sight was so overwhelming so utterly beyond human comprehension that Enoch fell upon his face as one dead. The ancient texts describe this moment with a reverence that borders on the ineffable. They speak of light brighter than the sun, of glory that would consume mortal flesh, of a presence so holy that even the highest angels veil their faces before it. Yet Enoch, prepared by his 3 centuries of communion with the divine, was not consumed. Instead, he was transformed, his mortal nature giving way to something far greater. The book of 2nd Enoch provides even more detailed descriptions of this celestial journey. It tells us that as Enoch ascended, his earthly garments were removed and replaced with garments of glory. His mortal flesh was anointed with celestial oil that shone brighter than the greatest light. His face was transformed to shine like the rays of the sun, and his eyes became like burning lamps. This was not merely a change of appearance, but a fundamental alteration of his very being. The text records that the Lord spoke to the archangel Michael, saying, "Go and take Enoch from out his earthly garments, and anoint him with my sweet ointment, and put him into the garments of my glory." This divine command initiated the process by which Enoch would cease to be merely human, and would become the great angel Metatron, clothed with authority and power beyond mortal comprehension. The transformation of Enoch into Metatron represents one of the most extraordinary metamorphoses recorded in all of sacred literature. This was not a gradual evolution, but rather a radical recreation, a divine act that fundamentally altered the very essence of what Enoch was. The ancient texts describe this process with a mixture of awe and careful theological precision, recognizing that they were attempting to describe something that transcends normal human experience. According to the mystical traditions, Enoch's transformation involved multiple stages, each more profound than the last. First came the removal of his earthly nature, not merely his physical body, but all the limitations and corruptions that attach to mortal existence. Sin, decay, ignorance, and death were stripped away like old garments, leaving only the pure essence of his sanctified soul. The second stage involved the expansion of his consciousness and understanding. Where once Enoch's mind could grasp only earthly things, now it was enlarged to comprehend heavenly mysteries. The wisdom of angels became his wisdom, the knowledge of the cosmos his knowledge. He understood the movements of every star, the purpose of every created thing, the hidden meanings behind every divine command. The third stage was the clothing of his transformed being with angelic glory. The texts describe how he was invested with garments of light, garments woven from the very radiance of the divine presence. These were not merely symbolic vestments, but actual spiritual realities that both expressed and empowered his new nature. The light that clothed him was not reflected light, but light that emanated from within, the mark of his new divine nature. The fourth and most crucial stage was the granting of divine authority. Enoch was not merely transformed into another angel among millions, but was elevated to a position of unique authority and responsibility. He was given access to the divine throne itself, permitted to stand in the immediate presence of the Almighty, and entrusted with secrets that were hidden from all other created beings. The Talmudic traditions speak of how Enoch's flesh was transformed into flame, his sinews into fire, his bones into burning coals. His eyelashes became flashes of lightning, his eyeballs torches of fire. This vivid imagery is not meant to be taken literally, but rather to convey the radical nature of his transformation. What had once been mortal and limited became immortal and limitless. What had once been bound by earthly constraints became free to operate in the fullness of celestial reality. Most remarkably, the transformation preserved Enoch's essential identity while completely changing his nature. He remained recognizably the same being who had walked with God on earth, yet he had become something infinitely greater. This paradox, continuity within radical change, represents one of the deepest mysteries of divine grace and power. The texts suggest that this transformation was necessary because of the role Enoch was destined to play in the cosmic order. As Metatron, he would need to bridge the gap between the infinite divine and finite creation. He would need to be capable of communicating divine truths to human prophets, while also standing before the throne of glory without being consumed. Only through this complete transformation could he fulfill such an impossible calling. The final stage of Enoch's celestial journey was his elevation to become Metatron, a name that carries within it the weight of cosmic authority and divine mystery. The very name Metatron has been the subject of intense scholarly and mystical speculation throughout the centuries. Some derive it from the Greek metathronos, meaning one who occupies the throne next to the divine throne. Others see in it the Hebrew Metatron, meaning guardian of the threshold. Still others find in it echoes of Matara, meaning keeper or guardian. Whatever its precise etymology, the name Metatron signifies Enoch's new position as the highest of all created beings, second in authority only to the Creator himself. This elevation was not merely honorary but functional. Metatron was granted actual authority to act in the name of the divine, to make decisions that affected the course of cosmic events, and to serve as the primary intermediary between heaven and earth. The ancient texts describe how, upon receiving the name Metatron, Enoch was invested with a crown of glory that contained within it all the letters of the divine name. This crown was not merely symbolic, but represented actual participation in divine authority. The letters of the name inscribed upon it glowed with the fire of divine holiness, marking Metatron as one who carried within himself the very essence of divine power. Along with the crown came a robe of glory that surpassed in magnificence the garments of all other angels. This robe was woven from the light of the divine presence itself, each thread a ray of glory, each fold a mystery of divine wisdom. To see Metatron clothed in this robe was to behold something of the glory of the divine itself, for the robe was not separate from its wearer, but was the visible manifestation of his transformed nature. The elevation to become Metatron also involved the granting of a unique throne, described in the mystical literature as second only to the throne of glory itself. This throne was placed at the entrance to the seventh heaven, where Metatron could serve as the guardian of the divine mysteries, while also being accessible to those souls and angels who had need of intercession or instruction. From this throne, Metatron exercises authority over all the hosts of heaven. The ancient texts describe how all angels, from the lowest to the highest, acknowledge his supremacy and submit to his authority. Even the mighty seraphim, who stand closest to the divine throne, recognize Metatron's unique position and defer to his judgment in matters of celestial administration. The transformation from Enoch to Metatron was complete when he was given the divine seal, a mark of authority that allowed him to act with the full power of the divine name. This seal was not simply impressed upon him, but became part of his very essence, marking him forever as the authorized representative of the Most High in all matters pertaining to the governance of creation. Perhaps most remarkably, Metatron retained within his transformed nature the memory and experience of his human existence. Unlike other angels who were created as angels from the beginning, Metatron alone among the heavenly host understood what it meant to be human, to struggle with temptation, to grow in righteousness through trial and effort. This unique perspective would prove invaluable in his role as intermediary between the divine and human realms. The elevation of Enoch to become Metatron represents the highest possibility of human spiritual development. It demonstrates that mortality need not be the final word, that righteousness can lead to transformation so complete that the very boundaries between human and divine become permeable. Yet it also establishes Metatron as a unique figure in cosmic history. No other human has undergone such a transformation, and the ancient texts suggest that none other ever will. In becoming Metatron, Enoch transcended not only his human limitations, but also the normal constraints of angelic existence. He became something new in creation, a being who combined human experience with divine authority, earthly wisdom with heavenly power, mortal memory with immortal existence. This unique combination would make him the perfect mediator between realms, the bridge across which divine truth could flow to human understanding. The completion of this transformation marked the beginning of Metatron's eternal service in the heavenly court. No longer Enoch the man, but now Metatron the angel, he took his place at the right hand of divine authority, ready to fulfill the cosmic role for which his entire earthly existence had been but preparation. The man who had walked with God on earth now stood beside the throne of glory in heaven. Transformed beyond recognition, yet somehow still recognizably the same righteous soul who had found favor in the sight of the Most High. This transformation from mortal man to mighty angel represents one of the supreme mysteries of divine grace and power. It demonstrates that the gap between human and divine, while vast, is not unbridgeable for those who walk in perfect righteousness and complete surrender to the divine will. In Metatron, we see the ultimate fulfillment of human spiritual potential, the answer to the deepest longings of the soul for union with the divine. The ancient texts that preserve these accounts speak with reverence and awe of this transformation, recognizing that they are describing something that touches the very heart of the relationship between Creator and creation. In the elevation of Enoch to become Metatron, we see demonstrated the incredible love of the divine for creation, a love so great that it can transform even mortal flesh into immortal glory, even human limitation into angelic authority. As we contemplate this profound mystery, we are reminded that the transformation of Enoch was not an end in itself, but the beginning of a new chapter in the cosmic drama. Metatron's role in the heavenly hierarchy, his functions as divine scribe and celestial intermediary, his conflicts with other angels, and his ongoing relationship with human spirituality, all of these flow from this initial moment of transformation, when a man who walked with God became the angel who stands forever before the throne of glory. The mystery of Metatron's transformation continues to inspire and challenge spiritual seekers across the centuries. It speaks to the highest possibilities of human spiritual development, while also revealing the infinite mercy and power of the divine. In studying this transformation, we are invited to consider our own potential for spiritual growth and transformation, even as we recognize that Metatron's elevation represents a unique event in the history of creation, never to be repeated, but forever serving as a beacon of hope for all who seek to draw near to the divine presence. In the celestial hierarchy that governs the heavens, no created being holds a position more exalted than Metatron, save for the Almighty himself. The transformation of Enoch from mortal flesh to angelic fire elevated him to a station unprecedented in the annals of creation. Where once stood a man who walked with God upon the earth, now sits an angel whose authority extends throughout the seven heavens, whose voice carries the weight of divine decree, and whose presence signifies the very face of the eternal. The title Prince of the Divine Presence, Sar Hapanim in Hebrew, marks Metatron as the supreme intermediary between the infinite God and his finite creation. This designation places him in a position of unparalleled privilege and responsibility, for he alone among all created beings is granted access to the innermost chambers of heaven, where the glory of God blazes with such intensity that even the seraphim must cover their faces with their wings. Scripture speaks of the throne of God as a place of indescribable majesty, surrounded by living creatures and burning with the fire of divine holiness. It is here, in this most sacred space, that Metatron takes his position at the right hand of the Almighty. The mystical texts describe how God prepared for Metatron a throne of glory, fashioned from the same divine light that illuminated the first day of creation. This throne, though infinitely lesser than the throne of the Most High, surpasses in splendor all the glory of earthly kingdoms and the magnificence of every other celestial being. Upon this throne of light, Metatron sits clothed in a robe that contains the radiance of all the stars, crowned with a diadem that bears the ineffable name of God, and wielding authority that spans from the highest heaven to the lowest earth. His position is not merely ceremonial, for from this throne he governs the movement of celestial bodies, oversees the activities of angelic hosts, and executes the divine will throughout creation. The proximity of Metatron's throne to that of the Almighty signifies a relationship unique in all of creation. While other angels, even the mighty seraphim and cherubim, maintain their distance from the divine presence, Metatron approaches the throne with boldness, not born of presumption, but granted by divine appointment. This nearness allows him to receive direct communication from God, to witness the unfolding of divine plans, and to serve as the primary channel through which the will of heaven is made known to creation. The celestial court of the Most High operates with a precision and hierarchy that reflects the perfect order of divine justice and mercy. At the head of this court sits the King of Kings, surrounded by myriads of angels arranged according to their ranks and functions. In this magnificent assembly, Metatron holds the position of Prime Minister, the one through whom the royal decrees are issued and executed. The mystical literature describes how all the angels of heaven must pass through Metatron to approach the divine throne. He serves as the gatekeeper of the divine presence, determining which prayers ascend to the Almighty, which souls are granted audience, and which divine revelations are released to the lower realms. This role makes him both the most sought after and the most feared of all celestial beings, for his approval determines access to the very source of all existence. In the daily operations of the heavenly court, Metatron presides over the councils of angels, receives reports from the various orders of celestial beings, and coordinates the vast network of divine activity that maintains the cosmos. The archangels Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel, mighty though they are, acknowledge his authority and submit their reports to him before they can reach the throne of glory. The court sessions described in the mystical texts reveal Metatron's role as the one who presents the cases of humanity before the divine judge. Each day, he brings forth the records of human deeds, compiled by the recording angels under his supervision. He advocates for the righteous, presents evidence of repentance, and ensures that divine justice is tempered with mercy according to the infinite wisdom of God. The role of Metatron as intermediary represents one of the most crucial functions in the economy of divine providence. As the bridge between the infinite God and finite creation, he translates the overwhelming glory of divine communication into forms that created beings can comprehend and receive. This mediation is necessary because the direct encounter with the unfiltered presence of God would consume any created entity, no matter how exalted. When God desires to communicate with prophets, patriarchs, or other chosen individuals, it is often through Metatron that the message is conveyed. The burning bush that spoke to Moses, the angel who wrestled with Jacob, the mysterious figure who appeared to Abraham. Mystical traditions identify these and other divine encounters as manifestations of Metatron's mediating presence. Through him, the voice of the Almighty becomes audible to human ears, and the will of heaven becomes comprehensible to earthly minds. This mediating role extends beyond communication to encompass the entire relationship between God and creation. Metatron serves as the conduit through which divine life flows into the created order, sustaining the existence of all things and maintaining the delicate balance between transcendence and immanence. Through his agency, God remains both infinitely beyond creation and intimately present within it. The mystical texts describe how Metatron's body spans the entire width of the world, symbolizing his role as the cosmic bridge that connects all levels of existence. From the highest heaven to the lowest earth, from the most exalted seraph to the humblest human soul, all creation is united through his mediating presence. This cosmic function makes him not merely an angel among angels, but the very principle of connection between the divine and the created. The title Prince of the Face carries profound theological significance, for it identifies Metatron as the one who bears the very countenance of God to creation. In Hebrew thought, the face represents the innermost essence of a person, the seat of recognition and relationship. To see someone's face is to know them in their most intimate reality. When applied to God, the concept of the divine face represents the personal aspect of the infinite being, the way in which the unknowable God makes himself known to his creatures. As the Prince of the Face, Metatron bears within himself the reflected glory of the divine countenance. He is the mirror in which creation beholds the face of its creator, the lens through which the infinite God focuses his attention upon finite beings. This role explains why encounters with Metatron are often described in terms of overwhelming light and glory, for in seeing him, one catches a glimpse of the divine face itself. The ancient liturgical texts speak of the divine face as the source of blessing and favor. When God makes his face to shine upon his people, they experience prosperity, protection, and peace. When he hides his face, they suffer judgment and exile. As the Prince of the Face, Metatron becomes the agent through whom these divine moods are expressed and experienced in creation. Through him, the favor or displeasure of God is made manifest in the world. This aspect of Metatron's identity also explains his role in the mystical experiences of prophets and visionaries. When they speak of seeing God, they are often describing encounters with Metatron as the visible manifestation of the invisible God. The face they see is his face, reflecting the glory of the one who cannot be seen directly. In this way, Metatron serves as the revelation of the hidden God, making visible the invisible, knowable the unknowable. The extent of Metatron's authority represents one of the most remarkable aspects of his celestial position. The mystical literature describes how God has granted him power over all created things, authority that surpasses even that of the highest archangels. This delegation of divine authority is so complete that the texts speak of Metatron as possessing the name, a reference to the ineffable name of God that contains within it all divine power. This extraordinary authority manifests itself in multiple ways throughout the heavenly hierarchy. Metatron has the power to command all angels, from the mighty seraphim who surround the throne to the humblest ministering spirits who serve in the outer courts of heaven. His word carries the force of divine decree, and his commands are obeyed without question throughout the celestial realm. In the governance of creation, Metatron's authority extends to the control of natural forces, the movement of celestial bodies, and the unfolding of historical events. The mystical texts describe how he holds the keys to the treasuries of snow and hail, how he commands the winds and directs the courses of the stars. Through him, the divine will is implemented in the physical world, maintaining the order and harmony of creation. The delegation of such vast authority to a created being, even one as exalted as Metatron, represents a profound mystery of divine providence. It demonstrates God's desire to work through intermediaries, to share his authority with those who have proven faithful, and to maintain the proper distance between the infinite creator and finite creation. Yet this delegation also creates tension within the heavenly hierarchy, as other angels struggle to understand how one who was once human could be elevated to such unprecedented heights. The organization of heaven follows a strict hierarchy that reflects the perfect order of divine justice and wisdom. At the apex sits the throne of the Almighty, surrounded by the immediate presence of the divine glory. Below this ultimate reality, the various orders of angels arrange themselves according to their function and proximity to the divine presence. The seraphim, those burning ones who cry, "Holy, holy, holy," before the throne, occupy the position closest to God in the traditional understanding of celestial hierarchy. Yet even these exalted beings must acknowledge the superior authority of Metatron, for his position transcends the normal categories of angelic rank. Where they serve as worshippers and proclaimers of divine holiness, he serves as administrator and executor of divine will. The cherubim, guardians of divine mysteries and bearers of the throne chariot, likewise recognize Metatron's supremacy. Though they possess profound wisdom and intimate knowledge of divine secrets, they defer to him as the ultimate keeper of heavenly knowledge. His authority over them is not merely administrative, but encompasses access to mysteries that even they are not permitted to know. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, mighty though they are in their respective spheres of authority, function under Metatron's overall supervision. Michael, the warrior prince who leads the heavenly hosts, receives his orders through Metatron. Gabriel, the messenger of God who announces divine revelations, reports to Metatron before delivering his messages. Raphael, the healer who brings divine restoration, and Uriel, the flame of God who executes divine judgment, both operate within the framework of authority established by Metatron's primacy. This arrangement creates a unique situation in the celestial hierarchy, for Metatron's position is not simply the highest rung on the angelic ladder, but represents a category unto itself. He stands as the bridge between the uncreated God and all created beings, including the highest angels. This intermediate position makes him both the most exalted of creatures and the most humble servant of the Creator. The mystical literature provides vivid descriptions of the divine throne room where Metatron exercises his supreme authority. This cosmic chamber, known as the seventh heaven, or the heaven of heavens, represents the very heart of creation, the point from which all divine activity emanates and to which all created response returns. The throne room itself defies all earthly comparison, for it exists in dimensions beyond the physical realm. Its walls are constructed from the light of the first day of creation. Its floor is paved with sapphire that reflects the glory of God, and its ceiling opens into the infinite expanse of divine being. Within this sacred space, the normal laws of time and space yield to the eternal presence of the Almighty. Metatron's throne, positioned at the right hand of God's throne, serves as the administrative center for all of creation. From this seat of power, he issues the daily orders that maintain the cosmic order, reviews the reports of angelic activity throughout the heavens, and coordinates the vast network of divine providence that governs the universe. The throne itself is described as being woven from the praises of Israel, constructed from the merits of the righteous, and adorned with the crowns of those who have served God faithfully. The daily routine of the throne room reveals the scope of Metatron's administrative responsibilities. Each morning, he receives the reports of the guardian angels who watch over individual souls, reviews the records of human deeds compiled during the night, and presents the cases requiring divine attention to the throne of judgment. Each evening, he issues the orders for the following day, dispatches angels to their various missions, and ensures that all aspects of divine providence are properly coordinated. The presence of other celestial beings in the throne room creates a complex social dynamic that revolves around Metatron's central authority. The various orders of angels maintain their positions according to their rank and function, but all acknowledge his supremacy in practical matters. Even the living creatures who bear the divine throne, the cherubim with their 4 faces and multiple wings, coordinate their movements according to his directions. One of the most significant aspects of Metatron's role as Prince of the Divine Presence is his function as the voice through which divine authority is exercised throughout creation. When the Almighty chooses to communicate with his creation, it is often through Metatron that the divine word is spoken. This delegation of the divine voice represents perhaps the most intimate aspect of the relationship between God and his supreme angel. The mystical texts describe how Metatron's voice carries the same authority as the voice of God himself, for it is empowered by the divine name that he bears. When he speaks, the very foundations of creation respond, the angels hasten to obey, and the course of history bends to accommodate the divine will. This is not mere delegation of authority, but a sharing of the divine nature itself with the one who has proven most faithful. The process by which Metatron receives and transmits divine communication represents one of the deepest mysteries of heavenly operation. In moments of profound silence, when even the seraphim cease their praise and the cherubim still their wings, the voice of the Almighty whispers to Metatron the secrets of divine will. These communications, received in the intimacy of the divine presence, are then translated into forms that can be comprehended and executed by the various orders of creation. The authority of Metatron's voice extends beyond the heavenly realm to encompass the earthly sphere as well. When prophets receive divine revelations, when righteous souls are granted mystical visions, when the course of nations is altered by divine intervention, it is often through the voice of Metatron that these changes are initiated. His voice becomes the instrument through which the transcendent God exercises immanent authority over his creation. This vocal ministry of Metatron also encompasses the role of advocate and intercessor. When the sins of humanity cry out for judgment, when the accusations of Satan demand divine response, when the prayers of the faithful seek heavenly attention, it is Metatron who presents these matters before the throne of grace. His voice carries the petitions of the righteous, pleads for mercy upon the repentant, and ensures that divine justice is always tempered by divine love. The administrative responsibilities of Metatron extend far beyond the confines of heaven to encompass the entire created order. As the supreme angel, he serves as the cosmic administrator through whom the divine will is implemented throughout the universe. This role requires him to maintain oversight of countless details, from the movement of galaxies to the struggles of individual souls. The scope of this administrative burden is staggering to contemplate. Every star in its course, every planet in its orbit, every atom in its dance, all operate under the ultimate supervision of Metatron. He coordinates the activities of myriads of angels, each with their specific assignments and responsibilities. He ensures that the natural laws remain consistent, that the seasons follow their appointed times, and that the delicate balance of the ecosystem is maintained. In the human sphere, Metatron's administrative role encompasses the oversight of individual destinies and collective histories. He maintains the records of human deeds, coordinates the work of guardian angels, and ensures that divine justice is properly administered. The rise and fall of nations, the birth and death of individuals, the unfolding of prophetic events, all occur under his watchful supervision. The administrative structure through which Metatron operates involves a complex hierarchy of angelic beings, each with specific functions and areas of responsibility. The archangels serve as his primary lieutenants, overseeing major spheres of activity. Below them are the various orders of angels, principalities, powers, virtues, dominions, each with their specialized roles in the cosmic administration. Through this vast network, the will of God is implemented with precision and efficiency throughout creation. The daily administrative duties of Metatron begin before the dawn of each day, as he reviews the reports submitted by angels throughout the cosmos. Decisions must be made regarding countless matters, which prayers to elevate to the divine throne, which souls to assign to guardian angels, which natural disasters to prevent or allow, which human enterprises to bless or withhold blessing. Each decision carries cosmic significance, for through Metatron's administrative choices, the very course of creation is shaped and directed. Among all the roles and responsibilities that define Metatron's position as Prince of the Divine Presence, perhaps none is more profound than his function as the keeper of divine secrets. The mystical traditions describe him as the repository of all hidden knowledge, the guardian of mysteries that even the highest angels are not permitted to know. This role places him in a position of unique privilege and terrible responsibility, for he alone among created beings has access to the deepest secrets of divine being and activity. The nature of these divine secrets encompasses multiple categories of hidden knowledge. There are secrets of creation, the hidden mechanisms by which the universe was brought into being and continues to be sustained. There are secrets of prophecy, the predetermined course of history, and the ultimate destiny of creation. There are secrets of the divine nature itself, aspects of God's being that transcend all created understanding, yet are somehow accessible to Metatron in his exalted state. The revelation of these secrets through Metatron to chosen individuals represents one of the primary ways in which divine knowledge enters the human sphere. The great mystics and prophets of history have received their most profound insights through encounters with Metatron, who serves as the divine teacher and revealer of hidden wisdom. These revelations are not arbitrary, but are carefully timed and precisely targeted to accomplish specific purposes in the unfolding of divine providence. The responsibility of keeping these secrets requires Metatron to exercise perfect judgment regarding what should be revealed and what must remain hidden. Not all knowledge is beneficial at all times. Some truths would overwhelm the human mind, while others would disrupt the proper unfolding of divine plans. The timing of revelation is as important as the content of what is revealed, and Metatron serves as the divine custodian who ensures that knowledge is released at the appropriate moment and in the appropriate form. The mystical literature describes the terrible burden of this knowledge, for to know the deepest secrets of existence is to bear responsibility for their proper use. Metatron's position as keeper of divine secrets isolates him even from other celestial beings, for much of what he knows cannot be shared even with the highest angels. This isolation is part of the price of his exalted position. To be closest to God is also to be most alone among created beings. One of the most challenging aspects of Metatron's role as Prince of the Divine Presence involves his authority over other angelic beings, including the power to judge and discipline those who fail in their appointed duties. This judicial function places him in the difficult position of exercising authority over beings who were once his equals or even superiors in the original hierarchy of creation. The necessity of angelic judgment arises from the fact that even celestial beings, despite their exalted nature, remain subject to the possibility of failure and disobedience. The mystical literature records instances of angels who have overstepped their bounds, failed to fulfill their assigned roles, or challenged the established order of heaven. In such cases, it falls to Metatron to investigate the charges, weigh the evidence, and render judgment according to divine justice. The process of angelic judgment differs significantly from human legal proceedings, for it involves beings of pure spirit whose motivations and actions are transparent to one possessing sufficient spiritual insight. Metatron's ability to judge angels stems not merely from his administrative position, but from his unique nature as one who has experienced both human and angelic existence. His perspective encompasses both the limitations of created beings and the requirements of divine service. The sentences pronounced by Metatron upon disobedient angels range from temporary suspension of privileges to permanent reassignment to lesser roles. In extreme cases, angels may be stripped of their celestial nature and cast down from their heavenly positions. The execution of such judgments requires not merely authority but wisdom, for the balance of celestial order must be maintained while justice is served. The emotional weight of this judicial role cannot be underestimated, for Metatron must often pronounce judgment upon beings who serve alongside him in the heavenly court. The relationships formed over eons of celestial service create bonds that make judgment difficult, yet the requirements of divine justice demand that personal feelings be set aside in favor of impartial truth. This aspect of his role contributes to the isolation inherent in supreme authority. The delegation of such extensive authority to Metatron represents one of the deepest mysteries in the divine economy. Why would the Almighty, who needs no assistance and lacks no power, choose to elevate a created being to such unprecedented heights? The answer lies not in divine necessity, but in divine love. The desire of God to share his authority with those who have proven faithful and to demonstrate the potential that exists within creation itself. The elevation of Enoch to become Metatron serves as a demonstration of divine grace and the possibility of transformation that exists for all created beings. It shows that the distance between earth and heaven, between humanity and divinity, is not insurmountable. Through faithfulness, righteousness, and intimate relationship with God, it is possible for created beings to be elevated far beyond their original nature and capacity. Yet this delegation of authority also serves practical purposes in the administration of creation. By establishing Metatron as the supreme intermediary, God creates a buffer between his infinite glory and finite creation. This arrangement allows for more intimate communication and more detailed administration, while preserving the transcendence necessary for divine majesty. Through Metatron, God can be both near and far, immanent and transcendent, accessible and holy. The mystery deepens when we consider that this delegation of authority involves sharing divine prerogatives that seem to belong exclusively to God himself. The power to judge, to command, to reveal, to intercede, these are functions that appear to be uniquely divine, yet they are exercised by Metatron with full divine backing. This sharing of divine functions suggests a profound trust and intimacy between creator and creature that transcends normal categories of relationship. The implications of this delegated authority extend throughout creation, for it establishes the principle that God chooses to work through intermediaries rather than direct intervention. This pattern of divine operation, exemplified supremely in Metatron, suggests that the ultimate purpose of creation involves the elevation of creatures to participation in divine life and authority. In Metatron, we see the fulfillment of the potential that exists within all creation. The position of Metatron as Prince of the Divine Presence thus stands as both culmination and beginning, the highest achievement of created being and the starting point for understanding the ultimate destiny of creation itself. In his exalted state, we glimpse the possibilities that await all who walk faithfully with God, who seek intimate relationship with the divine, and who offer themselves completely to the service of divine will. Through Metatron, the gap between creator and creation is bridged, the distance between heaven and earth is spanned, and the possibility of ultimate transformation is demonstrated. His authority, though delegated, is real, His position, though granted, is secure. His influence, though mediated, is profound. In the Prince of the Divine Presence, creation finds its highest expression and its ultimate hope. In the vast expanse of heaven, where time moves according to divine rhythm, and every action carries eternal significance, there exists a cosmic library that contains the complete record of all creation. At the heart of this celestial archive stands Metatron, the divine scribe, whose sacred duty encompasses the recording, preservation, and interpretation of every deed that has ever transpired throughout the universe. His role as the supreme recorder of divine activity places him at the very center of cosmic accountability, where justice and mercy intersect in the eternal ledger of existence. The mystical traditions speak of Metatron's scribal duties as beginning with the very moment of his transformation from Enoch the man to Metatron the angel. As his mortal flesh was consumed by divine fire and his human limitations were transcended by angelic power, he was simultaneously invested with the supreme responsibility of chronicling all of creation's unfolding story. This transition from earthly walker with God to heavenly recorder of divine activity represents one of the most profound role changes in the history of creation. The scope of Metatron's record-keeping extends far beyond mere historical documentation. Every thought, word, and deed of every created being is inscribed by his hand in the books of heaven. Every prayer uttered by faithful lips, every act of kindness performed in secret, every moment of suffering endured in faith, all find their place in the eternal records maintained by the divine scribe. Conversely, every sin committed in darkness, every word spoken in anger, every act of rebellion against divine will is likewise recorded with perfect accuracy and complete impartiality. The tools of Metatron's scribal office are fashioned from the very essence of divine creativity. His pen is carved from the light that existed before the creation of the sun, its tip sharpened by the breath of the Almighty himself. The ink with which he writes flows from the river of fire that emerges from beneath the throne of God, carrying within its essence the power to make his words indelible and eternal. The parchment upon which he inscribes the records of creation is woven from the fabric of eternity itself, impervious to decay and immune to the passage of time. Among the most sacred responsibilities entrusted to Metatron as the divine scribe is the maintenance of the books of life and death, those cosmic volumes that determine the eternal destiny of every soul. These are not merely ledgers of human activity, but living documents that respond to the spiritual condition of each individual, recording not only their actions, but the intentions of their hearts and the depths of their faith or rebellion. The Book of Life contains the names of all who have found favor with the Almighty, whose deeds have been weighed in the divine balance and found worthy of eternal blessing. Metatron's task involves the careful inscription of each name as it is proclaimed worthy by the divine judge, using letters of fire that burn with the intensity of divine love. The process of inscription is both solemn and joyous, for each name represents a soul that has successfully navigated the challenges of existence and emerged victorious in the struggle between good and evil. The maintenance of these sacred books requires constant vigilance, for the spiritual condition of souls is ever-changing. Names may be added as individuals turn to righteousness, and in the most tragic circumstances, names may be removed as souls choose the path of irrevocable rebellion. Metatron must track these changes with perfect accuracy, ensuring that the books always reflect the current spiritual reality of creation. This dynamic nature of the records means that his scribal work never ceases, requiring eternal attention and divine precision. The Book of Death serves as the counterpart to the Book of Life, containing not merely the names of those destined for judgment, but the complete record of their descent into spiritual darkness. The inscription of names in this book is performed with sorrowful duty rather than joy, for Metatron, having once been human himself, understands the tragedy represented by each soul that chooses destruction over salvation. The ink used for these inscriptions flows black as midnight, symbolizing the spiritual darkness that has overtaken these souls. Beyond these primary volumes, Metatron maintains subsidiary books that record the specific deeds and circumstances of each soul. The Book of Remembrance contains the record of every good deed performed by the righteous, ensuring that no act of kindness or moment of faithfulness is forgotten before God. The Book of Tears chronicles every moment of suffering endured by the innocent, every cry of anguish uttered by the oppressed, serving as testimony that divine justice will ultimately address every injustice. The repository of all recorded knowledge in heaven takes the form of a vast celestial library that defies all earthly comparison in its scope and organization. This cosmic archive, administered by Metatron in his capacity as divine scribe, contains not merely the records of past events, but the blueprints of future possibilities and the hidden patterns that govern the unfolding of creation. Every section of this library serves a specific purpose in the divine economy, and access to its contents is carefully regulated according to the needs of justice and mercy. The architecture of the Celestial Library reflects the perfect order of divine knowledge. Its halls stretch beyond the ability of created beings to measure, with shelves that rise to heights that disappear into the infinite glory of God. Each book, scroll, and tablet is positioned according to a system of classification that encompasses not merely chronological order, but spiritual significance, cosmic importance, and prophetic relevance. The organization itself serves as a revelation of divine wisdom, for the placement of each volume reflects deeper truths about the nature of existence and the purposes of creation. The books themselves are fashioned from materials that exist only in the heavenly realm. Some are bound in covers of crystallized light, their pages formed from compressed starfire that glows with internal radiance. Others are inscribed on tablets of sapphire, their text etched by the finger of God himself. The most sacred volumes are composed of pure spiritual essence, visible only to those who possess sufficient spiritual sight to perceive their contents. Each format serves a specific purpose, with the physical properties of the books reflecting the nature of their contents. The cataloguing system employed by Metatron ensures that any piece of information can be located with divine efficiency. The index to the Celestial Library exists not as a separate volume, but as a living consciousness that responds to the needs of those seeking knowledge. When divine wisdom requires access to specific information, the relevant texts present themselves to Metatron's attention without the need for physical searching. This supernatural organization reflects the perfect integration of knowledge and wisdom that characterizes all divine activity. Special collections within the library house the most sensitive and powerful knowledge in creation. The archive of divine names contains the record of all the sacred appellations by which God has revealed himself, each name carrying within it specific aspects of divine power and authority. The prophecy collection holds the complete record of all future events, sealed with divine authority and accessible only according to the predetermined timing of divine revelation. The mystery section contains knowledge so profound that it can be revealed only to souls who have been specially prepared to receive it without being overwhelmed by its implications. Among the most awesome responsibilities entrusted to Metatron is the maintenance of the books of destiny, those prophetic volumes that contain the predetermined course of history and the ultimate fate of all creation. These books represent the intersection of divine sovereignty and created freedom, recording not merely what will happen, but the spiritual principles that govern why events unfold as they do. The compilation and interpretation of these prophetic records requires wisdom that transcends ordinary angelic understanding, wisdom that has been granted to Metatron as part of his unique calling. The books of destiny are organized according to multiple timelines and probability structures that reflect the complex interplay between divine will and created choice. The primary timeline records the unalterable decrees of God, those events that will certainly come to pass regardless of created response. These include the ultimate triumph of good over evil, the final judgment of all souls, and the establishment of divine justice throughout creation. The certainty of these events provides the stable foundation upon which all other prophetic revelation rests. Secondary timelines record the various possibilities that emerge from the choices made by free-willed creatures. These branching narratives show how different decisions lead to different outcomes, how individual choices create ripple effects that influence entire civilizations, and how the exercise of created freedom operates within the boundaries of divine sovereignty. Metatron must track these multiple possibilities with perfect accuracy, noting how each choice creates new prophetic branches while maintaining awareness of the ultimate destination toward which all timelines converge. The individual destiny books record the specific calling and purpose assigned to each soul before their creation. These personal prophetic records contain the divine plan for each life, including the challenges that will test their faith, the opportunities for service that will be presented, and the ultimate role they are designed to play in the cosmic drama of existence. The maintenance of these individual records requires Metatron to understand the unique nature of each soul and the specific ways in which divine grace will work in their lives. The process of prophetic revelation involves the careful selection of information from the books of destiny according to divine timing and purpose. Not all prophetic knowledge is meant to be revealed at all times, for premature disclosure could disrupt the proper unfolding of divine plans or overwhelm souls with knowledge they are not prepared to handle. Metatron serves as the divine curator of prophetic revelation, ensuring that the right knowledge reaches the right recipients at the precisely appointed time. The role of Metatron as revealer of divine mysteries represents one of his most profound and challenging responsibilities. The mysteries of God encompass truth so deep and principles so fundamental that they touch the very foundations of existence itself. These are not merely intellectual puzzles to be solved, but spiritual realities that can transform the nature of those who receive them. The revelation of such mysteries requires not only perfect knowledge but perfect wisdom in determining who is prepared to receive them, and when such revelation would serve the purposes of divine love. The nature of divine mysteries encompasses multiple categories of hidden truth. There are mysteries of divine being, aspects of God's nature that transcend all created understanding, yet can be partially glimpsed by souls who have been specially prepared. There are mysteries of creation, the hidden mechanisms by which the universe operates, and the spiritual principles that govern material existence. There are mysteries of redemption, the ways in which divine love operates to restore fallen creation, and the cosmic significance of individual salvation. The process of mystery revelation involves a careful preparation of the recipient that may extend over years or even lifetimes. The human mind and spirit must be gradually expanded and purified to accommodate truths that would otherwise prove overwhelming or destructive. Metatron oversees this preparatory process, coordinating the experiences and influences that shape souls for the reception of divine revelation. This preparation often involves suffering and testing, for the capacity to receive divine mysteries must be forged in the furnace of spiritual trial. The methods by which Metatron reveals divine mysteries vary according to the nature of both the mystery and the recipient. Some revelations come through direct angelic visitation, where Metatron appears in forms that can be perceived by human consciousness. Others arrive through dreams and visions, where the normal limitations of physical existence are temporarily suspended to allow for direct spiritual communication. Still others emerge through the gradual illumination of understanding, where previously incomprehensible truths suddenly become clear through divine grace. The content of revealed mysteries often centers on the relationship between God and creation, the true nature of spiritual reality, and the ultimate destiny of existence. Recipients may be shown the hidden connections between earthly events and heavenly purposes, the spiritual significance of their personal trials and triumphs, or glimpses of the cosmic drama in which they play essential roles. These revelations serve not merely to satisfy curiosity, but to equip souls for the specific roles they are called to play in the divine plan. Communications with prophets and seers. Throughout the history of creation, certain individuals have been chosen to serve as conduits for divine communication to humanity. These prophets and seers, selected for their spiritual sensitivity and moral character, receive their most profound revelations through communication with Metatron in his role as the supreme messenger of divine will. The relationship between Metatron and these chosen vessels represents one of the most intimate forms of interaction between heaven and earth. The selection of prophets involves a process that begins before their birth, as Metatron reviews the books of destiny to identify souls whose nature and calling prepare them for this sacred responsibility. The criteria for prophetic calling extend beyond mere spiritual sensitivity to include moral courage, unwavering faith, and the capacity to bear the weight of divine revelation without being crushed by its intensity. These individuals are often marked for their calling through unusual circumstances of birth, early spiritual experiences, or providential encounters that prepare them for their ultimate role. The process of prophetic communication involves multiple levels of interaction between Metatron and the chosen recipient. Initial contact often occurs through dreams and visions, where the normal barriers between earthly and heavenly consciousness are temporarily lowered. These preliminary communications serve to acclimate the prophet to divine presence and to test their readiness for more direct forms of revelation. As the relationship develops, the communications become more immediate and intense, sometimes involving direct encounters with Metatron in his visible glory. The content of prophetic communications varies according to the specific needs of the historical moment and the particular calling of each prophet. Some receive revelations concerning future events, enabling them to warn of coming judgment or promise future blessing. Others are granted insight into divine purposes, allowing them to interpret current events in light of eternal significance. Still others receive detailed instructions for religious practice, legal systems, or moral conduct that will guide communities in the paths of righteousness. The burden of prophetic revelation extends far beyond the moment of reception to encompass the lifelong responsibility of faithful transmission. Prophets must often deliver messages that are unwelcome to their audiences, proclaim judgments that invite persecution, and maintain faith in promises whose fulfillment may lie far in the future. Metatron provides ongoing support and guidance to these chosen vessels, strengthening them for their difficult calling and ensuring the accuracy of their prophetic ministry. The responsibility of guarding sacred knowledge involves protecting certain truths from premature or inappropriate disclosure, while ensuring their preservation for the appropriate time and recipients. This dual function of concealment and preservation requires Metatron to exercise perfect judgment regarding the timing and manner of revelation, balancing the human desire for knowledge against the divine wisdom that recognizes the potential dangers of uncontrolled disclosure. The categories of protected knowledge include truths that could be misused by those lacking sufficient spiritual maturity, revelations whose premature disclosure would disrupt divine timing, and mysteries whose full comprehension requires extensive spiritual preparation. These protected truths are not withheld from malice or arbitrary divine decision, but from love and wisdom that recognizes the limited capacity of created beings to handle certain forms of knowledge without spiritual harm. The methods of protection employed by Metatron involve multiple layers of concealment and access control. Some knowledge is hidden in symbolic language that can be understood only by those possessing the interpretive keys. Other truths are embedded within complex allegories that reveal their meaning gradually as the recipient's spiritual understanding develops. Still others are protected by spiritual barriers that prevent access until the seeker has achieved the necessary level of purity and wisdom. The revelation of protected knowledge follows carefully established protocols that ensure both the readiness of the recipient and the appropriateness of the timing. Candidates for such revelation must demonstrate not only intellectual capacity, but spiritual maturity, moral integrity, and the willingness to use revealed knowledge only for purposes that align with divine will. The testing process for such candidates may extend over many years and involve trials designed to prove their worthiness for sacred trust. The ultimate purpose of guarding sacred knowledge is not to create an elite class of initiated individuals, but to ensure that revealed truth accomplishes its intended purposes without causing unintended harm. Knowledge released at the wrong time or to unprepared recipients can become a source of spiritual pride, dangerous experimentation, or destructive misunderstanding. Metatron's careful guardianship ensures that sacred knowledge serves its proper function of drawing souls closer to God, rather than becoming a stumbling block to spiritual progress. The administration of the Celestial Library requires skills that transcend ordinary organizational ability to encompass perfect knowledge of both content and significance. Metatron serves not merely as a curator of information, but as a living index to divine knowledge, capable of instantly accessing any piece of information and understanding its relationship to all other truth. This supernatural capacity for knowledge management reflects the divine wisdom that has been granted to him as part of his exalted calling. The daily operations of the Celestial Library involve constant updating as new events are recorded, new prophecies are fulfilled, and new souls enter into eternal destiny. Each addition to the library must be properly catalogued, cross-referenced, and integrated into the existing system of knowledge. This process requires not only perfect accuracy, but profound understanding of the spiritual significance of each new piece of information and its relationship to the overall purposes of creation. The access protocols for the Celestial Library ensure that each being receives only the knowledge appropriate to their station and calling. Angels of different ranks have access to different levels of information, with higher-ranking beings granted broader access, while maintaining restrictions on the most sensitive knowledge. Human souls who have achieved particular levels of spiritual development may be granted temporary access to specific sections of the library during mystical experiences or prophetic encounters. The preservation protocols employed by Metatron ensure that no knowledge is ever truly lost, even when earthly records are destroyed or forgotten. The celestial copies of all important information provide a backup system that transcends the limitations of material existence. This preservation function becomes particularly important during periods of persecution or cultural destruction, when earthly libraries are destroyed and oral traditions are lost. The research function of the Celestial Library involves the correlation of information from different sources and time periods to reveal hidden patterns and relationships. This analytical work often uncovers connections between seemingly unrelated events, demonstrates the fulfillment of ancient prophecies in contemporary circumstances, and reveals the ongoing operation of divine providence throughout history. Such research provides the foundation for new prophetic insights and deeper understanding of divine purposes. Beyond his role as mere keeper of knowledge, Metatron serves as the supreme teacher of hidden wisdom, instructing souls in the deeper truths of existence and the practical application of divine principles. This educational function extends beyond simple information transfer to encompass the transformation of understanding, the development of spiritual insight, and the cultivation of wisdom that leads to divine union. The curriculum of celestial education encompasses multiple levels of instruction, beginning with fundamental truths about the nature of God and creation, and progressing through increasingly complex revelations about divine purposes and cosmic destiny. Each level of instruction builds upon the previous foundation, while preparing students for even deeper mysteries. The progression through these levels requires not only intellectual comprehension, but spiritual growth and moral purification. The pedagogical methods employed by Metatron adapt to the nature and needs of each student. Some souls learn through direct instruction, receiving explicit teaching about divine truths. Others learn through experience, being guided through circumstances that demonstrate spiritual principles in practical ways. Still others learn through contemplation, being given symbolic or allegorical material that yields its meaning only through deep meditation and spiritual insight. The student body for this celestial education includes both angelic beings seeking deeper understanding of divine purposes and human souls who have achieved sufficient spiritual development to receive advanced instruction. The mixing of these different types of created beings in the same educational environment creates unique opportunities for learning, as each brings different perspectives and experiences to the study of divine truth. The ultimate goal of this educational process is not merely the accumulation of knowledge, but the transformation of the student into a being capable of participating more fully in divine life and purpose. Graduates of this celestial education become themselves teachers and guides for others, creating a multiplying effect that spreads divine wisdom throughout creation. This educational mission of Metatron thus serves the ultimate purpose of elevating all creation toward greater participation in divine glory and purposes. The complexity of divine purposes and the limitations of created understanding often create the need for interpretation and explanation of divine communications. Metatron serves as the supreme interpreter of divine will, translating the infinite wisdom of God into forms that can be comprehended and applied by finite beings. This interpretive function requires not only perfect understanding of divine intentions, but complete knowledge of the capacities and limitations of those who must receive and implement divine commands. The interpretive process begins with the reception of divine communication in its pure form, thoughts and intentions that transcend all categories of created understanding. These divine communications must then be translated into concepts, images, and language that can be grasped by the intended recipients without losing their essential meaning or authority. This translation process requires perfect fidelity to divine intention, combined with complete understanding of the recipient's capacity for comprehension. The challenges of interpretation arise from the vast difference between divine and created modes of understanding. Divine thoughts encompass infinite complexity and eternal perspective, while created minds operate within finite limitations and temporal constraints. The interpretive process must bridge this gap without compromising the integrity of the divine message or overwhelming the capacity of the recipient to receive and respond appropriately. The methods of interpretation vary according to the nature of both the message and the recipient. Simple commands may be transmitted directly with minimal interpretation, while complex theological truths may require elaborate symbolic systems or extended allegorical presentations. Prophetic revelations often employ symbolic language that contains multiple layers of meaning, allowing for different levels of understanding as the recipient's spiritual capacity develops over time. The authority of Metatron's interpretations derives not from his own wisdom, but from his unique position as the one who stands closest to the divine throne and receives direct access to divine intentions. His interpretations carry the weight of divine authority because they represent faithful transmission of divine will rather than personal speculation or opinion. This authority makes his interpretive function essential to the proper communication of divine truth throughout creation. Among the most sobering aspects of Metatron's role as divine scribe is his responsibility for maintaining the complete record of divine justice, the cosmic accounting system that tracks every act of righteousness and rebellion, every moment of faithfulness and betrayal, every instance of divine mercy and judgment. This comprehensive record serves as the foundation for all divine judicial activity and provides the evidence upon which eternal destinies are determined. The recording of divine justice involves the careful documentation of not merely external actions, but internal motivations, circumstances, and spiritual conditions that influence moral responsibility. The same external action may carry different moral weight depending upon the actor's knowledge, circumstances, and intentions. Metatron must record these nuancing factors with perfect accuracy to ensure that divine justice operates with complete fairness and appropriate mercy. The standards by which divine justice operates transcend human legal systems in their comprehensiveness and precision. Every thought is evaluated for its moral content. Every word is assessed for its truthfulness and kindness. Every action is judged according to its conformity to divine will and its impact upon other beings. The recording of these evaluations requires perfect moral understanding and complete knowledge of divine standards of righteousness. The presentation of justice records before the divine tribunal involves the careful organization and summarization of often complex moral histories. Individual cases may involve lifetimes of mixed behavior, requiring careful analysis to determine the overall spiritual trajectory of the soul in question. Metatron must present these cases in ways that illuminate the key moral decisions and spiritual turning points that have shaped each individual's eternal destiny. The execution of divine justice involves the implementation of judicial decisions throughout creation, ensuring that rewards and punishments are distributed according to divine decree. This function requires Metatron to coordinate with other angelic beings responsible for specific aspects of divine judgment while maintaining oversight of the entire process to ensure consistency and accuracy in the administration of cosmic justice. The recording, presentation, and execution of divine justice represents perhaps the most weighty aspect of Metatron's scribal responsibilities. The eternal consequences of these activities place enormous responsibility upon his shoulders, requiring perfect accuracy, complete impartiality, and unwavering commitment to divine standards of righteousness. Yet this burden is carried with the assurance that divine justice ultimately serves the purposes of love, working to purify creation and establish the conditions necessary for eternal peace and harmony. Through his multifaceted role as divine scribe and keeper of secrets, Metatron serves as the cosmic memory of creation, the guardian of divine knowledge, and the faithful recorder of the ongoing drama of existence. His work ensures that nothing of significance is forgotten, that divine purposes are properly documented and implemented, and that the ultimate accounting of creation reflects the perfect justice and mercy of the Almighty. In this capacity, he stands as both witness and participant in the greatest story ever told, the unfolding relationship between Creator and creation, recorded for eternity in the books of heaven. In the vast tapestry of divine revelation, few figures command as much reverence and mystery as Metatron, the angel who stands at the threshold between the knowable and the unknowable. As the celestial scribe and keeper of divine secrets, Metatron's role transcends mere record-keeping. He becomes the conduit through which the most profound mysteries of creation flow from the throne of the Almighty to the hearts and minds of chosen mortals. This chapter delves into the sacred narrative of how Metatron, once the righteous Enoch, became the revealer of forbidden knowledge, the teacher of prophets, and the guide who illuminates the path between earthly understanding and heavenly wisdom. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai to receive the tablets of the law, the ancient texts tell us that he encountered far more than stone inscribed with commandments. According to the mystical traditions preserved in Jewish literature, it was Metatron who served as Moses' guide through the celestial realms, revealing to him not only the Torah that would be given to Israel, but also the deeper mysteries that undergird all of creation. The Talmudic sages speak of Moses' 40-day sojourn on the mountain not merely as a time of receiving law, but as a period of transformation and revelation that elevated him above ordinary human consciousness. In this sacred space between earth and heaven, Metatron appeared to Moses as a figure of such magnificent splendor that his face shone with reflected divine glory. The angel's presence was both overwhelming and necessary, for without this celestial intermediary, no mortal flesh could approach the burning throne of God and survive. Metatron revealed to Moses the structure of the heavenly realms, showing him the 7 heavens and their inhabitants, the orders of angels and their functions, and the cosmic machinery that governs the movements of stars and seasons. More profoundly still, he unveiled the inner dimensions of the Torah itself, showing Moses how each letter contained worlds within worlds, how each word pulsed with creative power, and how the entire revelation was but a reflection of the divine name that encompasses all existence. The angel taught Moses the 70 languages spoken by humanity, enabling him to understand the prayers and needs of all peoples. He showed him the treasury of souls, where the spirits of the righteous await their time of incarnation, and the chambers of judgment, where the deeds of mortals are weighed in the balance of divine justice. Through Metatron's instruction, Moses learned not only to be a lawgiver to Israel, but a shepherd of souls who could intercede between God and humanity. In these revelations, Metatron demonstrated his unique position as the angel who bridges the gap between the transcendent and the immanent. Unlike other angels who serve specific functions within the celestial hierarchy, Metatron's knowledge encompasses all aspects of divine wisdom. He alone among the angels had once walked as a mortal man, and thus he understood both the limitations of human comprehension and the infinite expanse of divine truth. This dual nature made him the perfect teacher for Moses, who would need to translate celestial wisdom into earthly language that his people could understand and follow. The sacred mountain became, through Metatron's presence, a place where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds dissolved. Moses experienced visions of the divine chariot, saw the throne room of heaven with its rivers of fire and walls of crystal, and witnessed the eternal song of praise that rises from all creation. Yet these revelations came not as overwhelming mystical experiences that would leave him speechless, but as carefully structured teachings that Metatron organized and explained, preparing Moses for his role as the greatest of the prophets. The vast corpus of Talmudic literature preserves numerous accounts of Metatron's role as divine teacher, presenting him as the celestial master who instructs not only prophets, but also the souls of the righteous dead and the angels themselves. In these ancient texts, Metatron appears as the personification of divine wisdom made accessible to created beings, the bridge between the incomprehensible God and the minds that seek to know him. The Talmudic sages describe Metatron's teaching methods with reverence and wonder. Unlike earthly teachers who must struggle to convey knowledge through imperfect language, Metatron imparts understanding directly to the soul. His students do not merely hear his words, they experience the truth he conveys, feeling it resonate within their spiritual essence until it becomes part of their very being. This method of instruction transforms not just understanding, but the student themselves, elevating their consciousness to perceive realities that would otherwise remain hidden. In the tractate Sanhedrin, the rabbis tell of how Metatron instructs the souls of children who die in infancy, ensuring that they receive the Torah education they were denied in life. This tender aspect of his ministry reveals the compassion that underlies all divine knowledge. Metatron does not hoard wisdom like a miser guards gold, but distributes it according to each soul's capacity and need. The children who come to him receive not adult understanding forced upon young minds, but pure, innocent wisdom that matches their spiritual state. The Talmud also preserves accounts of Metatron's role in preserving and transmitting the oral tradition that accompanies the written Torah. When Moses received the law on Sinai, he received not only the written commandments but also their interpretation and application. This oral tradition, equally sacred and necessary, was entrusted to Metatron's perfect memory. As the divine scribe, he ensures that not one word, not one nuance of meaning is lost across the generations. Through the generations of sages and scholars, Metatron continues his work of instruction. The Talmudic masters who spent their lives studying Torah often reported dreams and visions in which a magnificent angel appeared to resolve their most difficult questions. These encounters were understood to be visits from Metatron, who continues to guide human understanding of divine law. His appearances were not arbitrary gifts but responses to sincere seeking, rewards for those who approached sacred study with proper reverence and genuine desire for truth. The Talmudic literature reveals Metatron as the angel who understands both the letter and spirit of divine law. He knows when strict interpretation serves justice and when mercy requires a broader understanding. This wisdom makes him not merely a teacher of facts, but a guide to righteousness, showing students not just what God has commanded, but why these commandments lead to life and blessing. Through his instruction, law becomes not burden but gift, not restriction but pathway to freedom. In the mystical passages of the Talmud, Metatron appears as the angel who reveals the hidden connections that bind all aspects of creation together. He shows how the movements of the heavenly bodies influence events on earth, how the prayers of the righteous ascend through the celestial realms, and how divine providence works through apparent coincidence and natural law. This comprehensive understanding makes him the perfect teacher for those who seek to serve God, not through blind obedience, but through conscious cooperation with divine will. Throughout the long history of prophecy, Metatron has appeared as the celestial herald who prepares chosen souls for their encounters with divine revelation. The prophets of Israel did not simply hear God's voice speaking from an empty heaven. They were granted visions of the celestial court, the angelic hierarchies, and the cosmic processes through which divine will manifests in the world. In these visions, Metatron often served as guide and interpreter, helping mortal minds comprehend sights and sounds that transcend ordinary human experience. The prophet Ezekiel's famous vision of the divine chariot represents one of the most detailed accounts of Metatron's role in prophetic revelation. When Ezekiel saw the throne of God surrounded by living creatures and wheels within wheels, he was witnessing the very heart of divine governance over creation. Yet this overwhelming vision would have destroyed his sanity had not Metatron appeared as his guide, explaining the significance of each symbol and helping him understand how the celestial machinery he witnessed related to God's purposes for his people on earth. In Ezekiel's account, Metatron appears as the figure of a man seated above the throne, blazing with divine fire, yet retaining human form. This appearance reflects his unique nature as the angel who was once mortal, who can therefore serve as interpreter between the human and divine realms. Through Metatron's explanation, Ezekiel understood that the divine chariot is not a static throne but a dynamic expression of God's active involvement in history. The wheels that moved in all directions simultaneously represented divine providence working through time and space, while the living creatures symbolized the various aspects of divine nature working in harmony. The prophet Daniel's visions of future kingdoms and the end times were similarly mediated through Metatron's instruction. When Daniel saw the Ancient of Days seated in judgment and the Son of Man receiving dominion over all nations, he was witnessing the eternal perspective from which all history unfolds. Metatron appeared to him as the interpreter of these visions, explaining how earthly kingdoms rise and fall according to divine decree, and how the sufferings of the righteous serve ultimate purposes that transcend immediate understanding. Through Metatron's teaching, Daniel learned to read the signs of divine intervention in human affairs. The angel showed him how apparent defeats often conceal ultimate victories, how periods of persecution purify God's people, and how even the most oppressive rulers serve divine purposes they do not understand. This knowledge enabled Daniel not only to interpret dreams and visions for earthly rulers, but to encourage his people with the assurance that their God remains sovereign despite appearances to the contrary. The mystical literature preserves accounts of numerous sages who received visions through Metatron's intercession. Rabbi Ishmael's ascent to heaven, recorded in the Merkaba literature, describes how Metatron served as his guide through the celestial palaces, revealing the inner workings of divine judgment and mercy. As they passed through each heaven, Metatron explained the functions of the various angelic orders, the significance of their songs of praise, and the cosmic purposes served by their ceaseless service. In these visions, Metatron revealed the interconnectedness of all existence, showing how prayers offered on earth create ripples throughout the celestial realms, how acts of kindness strengthen the foundations of creation, and how sin damages not only the sinner, but the cosmic harmony that sustains all life. This comprehensive perspective enabled the sages to understand their responsibilities not merely as members of human society, but as participants in the grand drama of creation itself. The visions granted through Metatron's intercession were never mere spectacle or entertainment. Each revelation came with specific purpose, preparing the recipient for service that would benefit not only their immediate community, but generations yet unborn. The prophets who saw through Metatron's guidance returned to their people with messages that combined immediate relevance with eternal significance, speaking to their present circumstances while revealing the deeper patterns of divine action that would unfold across centuries. These mystical encounters also serve to validate and preserve the prophetic tradition itself. When later generations questioned whether divine revelation had truly been given to the ancient prophets, the consistent testimony of those who had received visions through Metatron's guidance provided confirmation. The angel who had once walked as mortal man, who knew both human limitation and divine infinitude, served as the guarantee that God continued to communicate with his people through chosen messengers. Beyond the revelations given to public prophets, Metatron serves as the guardian and transmitter of esoteric wisdom reserved for those souls capable of receiving deeper mysteries. This hidden knowledge encompasses not only the inner dimensions of biblical revelation, but also the cosmic principles that govern the relationship between Creator and creation. Through carefully orchestrated encounters with mystics and sages, Metatron ensures that this precious wisdom passes from generation to generation without being corrupted or misunderstood. The transmission of esoteric wisdom through Metatron follows patterns established in the earliest days of prophecy. Like Moses on Sinai, those chosen to receive these teachings must first undergo purification and preparation that elevates their consciousness beyond ordinary human awareness. This process often involves periods of fasting, prayer, and meditation that attune the soul to celestial frequencies. Only when the recipient has achieved the necessary spiritual refinement does Metatron reveal himself and begin the sacred instruction. The wisdom transmitted through Metatron encompasses multiple dimensions of divine truth. On one level, he reveals the hidden meanings embedded within biblical narratives, showing how the stories of patriarchs and prophets contain cosmic principles that apply to all souls seeking union with God. Abraham's journey from Ur to Canaan becomes a map of the soul's journey from worldly consciousness to divine awareness. Jacob's wrestling with the angel represents every seeker's struggle to overcome the limitations of mortal understanding. Moses' encounters with God reveal the stages through which human consciousness must pass to receive divine revelation. On a deeper level, Metatron transmits knowledge of the divine names and their proper use in prayer and meditation. These names are not mere words, but expressions of divine power that, when understood correctly, enable the soul to align itself with specific aspects of God's nature. Through careful instruction, Metatron teaches chosen souls how to invoke these names in ways that draw down blessing and protection while avoiding the dangers that come from misusing sacred power. The angel also reveals the correspondence between earthly and heavenly realities, showing how every action performed on earth has its counterpart in the celestial realms. This knowledge enables initiated souls to understand their true significance as co-creators with God, whose thoughts, words, and deeds participate in the ongoing work of creation. Through Metatron's teaching, they learn to live consciously as citizens of both worlds, fulfilling their earthly responsibilities while remaining aware of their eternal destiny. Perhaps most importantly, Metatron transmits the wisdom of divine love that underlies all existence. This love is not sentimental affection, but cosmic force that draws all creation back to its source in God. Through direct experience rather than mere intellectual understanding, recipients of Metatron's instruction learn to perceive this love operating through apparent contradictions and difficulties. They see how divine mercy and justice work together, how seeming obstacles serve ultimate purposes, and how every soul's journey, however circuitous, ultimately leads home to God. The preservation of this esoteric wisdom requires not only faithful transmission, but also careful concealment from those unprepared to receive it. Metatron teaches his students when to speak and when to remain silent, how to encode profound truths in simple language, and how to recognize those souls ready for deeper instruction. This discretion protects both the wisdom itself and those who might be harmed by premature exposure to truths beyond their current capacity for understanding. The chain of transmission established through Metatron's guidance creates an invisible community of souls across time and space. Those who receive his instruction become links in a golden chain that connects the earliest prophets with contemporary seekers. This community transcends religious boundaries and cultural differences, united by shared recognition of the divine source from which all wisdom flows. Through their continued study and practice, they ensure that the light of divine knowledge continues to illuminate human consciousness, despite the darkness that often seems to prevail in worldly affairs. In the rich tradition of apocalyptic literature, Metatron emerges as the supreme revealer of divine mysteries concerning the end times and the ultimate destiny of creation. Unlike the earthly prophets who spoke primarily to their immediate historical circumstances, Metatron's apocalyptic revelations transcend temporal boundaries, revealing the eternal perspective from which all history appears as a single, purposeful narrative moving toward its appointed conclusion. The Book of Enoch, which bears the name of Metatron's mortal identity, contains some of the most detailed apocalyptic visions preserved in ancient literature. In these texts, Metatron appears as the guide who leads chosen souls through visions of the final judgment, the resurrection of the dead, and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. These revelations serve not merely to satisfy curiosity about future events, but to provide comfort and guidance for those who suffer persecution and injustice in the present age. Through Metatron's apocalyptic revelations, readers learn that the apparent triumph of evil in the world is temporary and illusory. The angel shows how divine justice operates according to a timeline that encompasses not merely human lifespans but cosmic epochs. What appears as delay in divine intervention is actually divine patience, providing opportunity for repentance and redemption before the final accounting. This perspective enables believers to maintain faith and hope, even in circumstances that would otherwise lead to despair. The apocalyptic literature reveals Metatron's unique role as the angel who understands both divine justice and divine mercy in their fullest expression. In his visions of the final judgment, he shows how God's righteousness demands the punishment of evil, while his compassion seeks the salvation of every soul willing to turn from darkness to light. This tension between justice and mercy finds its resolution in the divine plan that Metatron reveals, a plan that satisfies both demands through the ultimate triumph of good over evil. In the apocalyptic texts, Metatron reveals the cosmic significance of human choices and actions. Every decision made by mortal beings has consequences that ripple through the celestial realms, contributing to the great struggle between light and darkness that will culminate in the end times. This knowledge elevates human responsibility to cosmic proportions, while simultaneously providing assurance that no righteous deed goes unnoticed or unrewarded in the divine accounting. The angel's apocalyptic revelations also concern the transformation that awaits creation itself. Through Metatron's instruction, visionaries learn that the end times will bring not destruction but renewal, not the annihilation of the physical world, but its elevation to a higher state of existence. The new heaven and new earth that will emerge from the final judgment will retain all that is good and beautiful in the present creation, while being purged of everything that causes suffering and separation from God. Metatron's apocalyptic teachings address the fate of individual souls as well as the destiny of creation as a whole. He reveals the process of judgment that awaits each person after death, the purification that prepares souls for eternal life, and the resurrection that will reunite spirit with glorified flesh. These revelations provide detailed guidance for preparation, showing how choices made in this life determine one's eternal destiny. The apocalyptic literature preserves Metatron's revelations concerning the signs that will precede the end times, enabling the faithful to recognize the approach of the final age. These signs encompass both earthly events and celestial phenomena, natural disasters and spiritual awakenings, the rise of false prophets and the appearance of true messengers. Through careful study of these prophetic indicators, believers can discern the times and seasons while avoiding deception by those who would exploit apocalyptic expectations for selfish purposes. Perhaps most importantly, Metatron's apocalyptic revelations emphasize the role of the righteous in the unfolding of the divine plan. The end times will not arrive through natural progression alone, but through the faithful cooperation of human souls with divine purpose. Those who receive Metatron's apocalyptic instruction learn that they are not merely passive observers of cosmic drama, but active participants whose prayers, sacrifices, and faithful witness contribute to the final victory of light over darkness. As the celestial scribe who records the decrees of the Almighty, Metatron possesses unique access to the divine plans that will unfold throughout history. His revelations concerning future events serve not merely to satisfy human curiosity about tomorrow, but to provide the wisdom needed for righteous living in the present moment. Through carefully timed disclosures to chosen prophets and mystics, Metatron reveals just enough of the divine plan to enable faithful cooperation without overwhelming human free will or reducing history to predetermined fate. The nature of Metatron's prophetic knowledge differs fundamentally from human attempts to predict the future through natural means. While earthly prognostication relies on the analysis of present trends and the assumption that current patterns will continue, Metatron's revelations flow from direct knowledge of divine intention. He sees not merely what is likely to happen based on present circumstances, but what will happen according to the eternal purposes of God, purposes that transcend human understanding and often confound worldly wisdom. This divine perspective enables Metatron to reveal future events in ways that serve spiritual rather than merely practical purposes. When he showed Daniel the succession of world empires that would rise and fall before the establishment of God's eternal kingdom, the revelation served to strengthen faith in divine sovereignty rather than to provide political intelligence for immediate advantage. Similarly, when he revealed to John the symbolic visions recorded in the book of Revelation, the purpose was to encourage persecuted Christians with assurance of ultimate victory rather than to provide a detailed timeline of future events. Metatron's revelations of divine plans often come in symbolic rather than literal form, requiring spiritual discernment for proper interpretation. This symbolic presentation serves multiple purposes. It protects the revelations from misuse by those who would exploit prophetic knowledge for selfish gain. It allows the same revelation to speak to multiple generations facing different circumstances, and it requires recipients to develop the spiritual maturity necessary for handling divine truth responsibly. The angel's knowledge of future events encompasses both the broad sweep of cosmic history and the intimate details of individual destiny. He knows the rise and fall of nations, the coming of messengers and teachers, the timing of divine interventions in human affairs. Yet he also knows the personal calling of each soul, the challenges they will face, the opportunities they will encounter, and the ultimate destiny that awaits their faithful cooperation with divine will. This comprehensive knowledge makes Metatron the perfect counselor for souls seeking guidance about their role in the divine plan. Through dreams, visions, and mystical encounters, he provides direction that acknowledges both human limitation and divine possibility. His guidance never violates human free will by providing too much information about predetermined outcomes, yet it offers enough insight to enable wise choices that align with divine purpose. The revelations of divine plans transmitted through Metatron often concern the education and preparation of humanity for higher levels of consciousness and spiritual development. He reveals how historical events serve as classroom experiences for collective human learning, how challenges and difficulties contribute to spiritual growth, and how apparent setbacks often conceal divine strategies for ultimate advancement. This educational perspective transforms history from a sequence of random events into a purposeful curriculum designed to develop human capacity for divine union. Metatron's revelations also concern the cosmic cycles that govern spiritual development on both individual and collective levels. He reveals how souls reincarnate to complete unfinished lessons, how nations rise and fall to serve larger purposes in human education, and how the entire cosmos participates in great cycles of manifestation and return to source. This cyclical perspective provides context for understanding both personal struggles and historical events as parts of larger patterns too vast for ordinary human comprehension. The future events revealed through Metatron's guidance often require long periods of preparation before their fulfillment. The promises given to Abraham concerning his descendants required centuries for their complete realization. The prophecies concerning the Messiah spoken through various prophets unfolded across many generations. This extended timeline teaches patience and faith while providing assurance that divine promises, however delayed they may appear, remain absolutely reliable. Through his revelations of divine plans and future events, Metatron serves as the bridge between eternal purpose and temporal experience. He helps finite minds grasp infinite intentions, mortal consciousness comprehend immortal designs, and human will align with divine will. In this role, he fulfills his unique function as the angel who, having once been human, understands both the limitations that require divine revelation and the capacities that make such revelation possible. In the celestial hierarchy, where angels serve as messengers and guardians of divine will, Metatron stands apart as the keeper of knowledge that transcends mortal understanding. His role extends far beyond that of a typical angel. He is the custodian of secrets that bridge the gap between the divine and human realms. The forbidden knowledge that flows through Metatron encompasses the deepest mysteries of creation, the hidden workings of divine justice, and the sacred truths that govern both heaven and earth. The very concept of forbidden knowledge, in the context of Metatron, speaks to truths too profound for ordinary human comprehension, secrets that must be revealed only to those who have been specially chosen and prepared. This knowledge is not forbidden because it is evil, but because it carries such power and responsibility that only the purest souls can receive it without being consumed by its magnitude. Metatron's unique position as the former human Enoch grants him an understanding of both human limitation and divine perfection. This dual nature makes him the ideal intermediary for transmitting sacred knowledge to mortals who have proven themselves worthy through righteousness and spiritual dedication. The knowledge he guards includes the mechanisms of divine judgment, the true names of God, the structure of the heavenly realms, and the hidden meanings within the sacred texts. The transmission of this knowledge occurs through visions, mystical experiences, and direct revelation to prophets and sages who have achieved the highest levels of spiritual purity. Metatron does not dispense this knowledge carelessly. Each revelation is carefully measured and precisely timed according to divine will. The recipient must be prepared not only intellectually but spiritually, for the weight of such knowledge can either elevate a soul to unprecedented heights or crush it under the burden of divine responsibility. The relationship between Metatron and Moses represents one of the most profound connections between the angelic realm and human prophecy. Moses, who spoke with God face to face and received the Torah on Mount Sinai, was granted access to knowledge that no other human had received. In this sacred exchange, Metatron served as the divine mediator, the one who could safely transmit the overwhelming presence of God's wisdom to human consciousness. According to the mystical traditions, when Moses ascended Mount Sinai, he entered not merely a physical space, but a spiritual dimension, where the boundaries between heaven and earth became permeable. It was here that Metatron appeared to him, not as a fearsome angel of judgment, but as a guide who would help him navigate the overwhelming experience of divine revelation. The 40 days and nights that Moses spent on the mountain were not simply a period of receiving stone tablets. They were a transformative journey through the layers of heavenly knowledge. Metatron revealed to Moses the deeper meanings hidden within the commandments, the mystical significance of the ritual laws, and the cosmic purpose behind the formation of the Israelite nation. The written Torah that Moses brought down from the mountain was merely the outer shell of a much more profound oral tradition that contained the essential keys to understanding divine will. This oral tradition, passed down through generations of sages, carries within it the direct teachings that Metatron imparted during those sacred encounters. The relationship between Moses and Metatron extended beyond the giving of the Torah. Throughout Moses' leadership of the Israelites, Metatron continued to serve as his celestial guide, providing wisdom for the countless decisions and challenges that arose during the 40 years in the wilderness. When Moses faced the rebellion of Korah, the complaints of the people, or the complexities of establishing divine law in human society, it was Metatron who provided the spiritual insight necessary to navigate these challenges according to divine will. The mystical texts describe moments when Moses would withdraw from the camp to commune with the divine presence, entering a state of spiritual elevation where he could receive direct guidance from Metatron. These encounters were not mere conversations, but profound spiritual unions where human consciousness merged with angelic wisdom. Moses would return from these experiences transformed, carrying not only specific instructions but a deeper understanding of the divine plan for humanity. Metatron's role in Moses' life also involved preparing him for the ultimate sacrifice of leadership. The angel who had once been human understood the burden of serving as a bridge between divine perfection and human limitation. Through their relationship, Moses learned to carry the weight of divine knowledge while maintaining his compassion for human frailty. This preparation proved essential as Moses guided the Israelites through their spiritual evolution from slavery to freedom, from ignorance to enlightenment. The transmission of knowledge from Metatron to Moses established a pattern that would continue throughout Jewish mystical tradition. The direct revelation of divine secrets to chosen individuals, the careful preservation of this knowledge through oral transmission, and the gradual unveiling of deeper truths to subsequent generations all flow from this foundational relationship. Moses became not only the lawgiver, but the first in a long line of mystics who would continue to receive and transmit the sacred knowledge that Metatron guards. Within the vast corpus of Talmudic literature, Metatron emerges as a figure of immense significance, though his appearances are often veiled in mystical language that requires careful interpretation. The Talmud, with its layers of commentary and discussion spanning centuries, provides glimpses into the role of Metatron that complement and expand upon the biblical foundations. These references reveal not only his functions within the divine hierarchy, but also the profound theological implications of his unique status. The Talmudic sages, inheritors of the oral tradition that began with Moses, possessed knowledge of angelic hierarchies and divine operations that they transmitted through carefully coded language. Their discussions of Metatron often occur in the context of exploring the most fundamental questions of divine justice, providence, and the relationship between creator and creation. These passages, while sometimes cryptic, provide essential insights into how the ancient rabbis understood Metatron's role in the cosmic order. In Tractate Sanhedrin, the Talmud presents one of its most significant discussions of Metatron in the context of divine authority and judgment. The text describes how Metatron was granted permission to sit in the divine presence, a privilege accorded to no other angel. This sitting represents not merely a physical position, but a participation in divine authority that borders on the incomprehensible. The implications of this passage have reverberated through centuries of Jewish thought, raising profound questions about the nature of divine unity and the possibility of shared divine authority. The Talmudic tradition also preserves accounts of Metatron's role in recording human deeds and maintaining the celestial archives. These descriptions go far beyond simple bookkeeping. They reveal a cosmic system of justice, where every action, word, and thought is preserved and weighed according to divine standards. Metatron's function as the celestial scribe places him at the center of this system, responsible for maintaining the perfect record that will be consulted on the Day of Judgment. The rabbis of the Talmud understood that Metatron's record-keeping involved not only the documentation of deeds, but the preservation of their spiritual significance. Every act of kindness, every moment of study, every prayer offered in sincerity is recorded not merely as a historical fact, but as a spiritual reality that contributes to the cosmic balance between good and evil. This understanding transforms human existence from a series of random events into a carefully observed spiritual journey where every choice carries eternal significance. Tractate Haggadah contains discussions of Metatron that touch upon the mystical dimensions of his identity. The text speaks of the youth, whose name is like that of his master, referring to the tradition that Metatron bears one of the divine names. This reference opens up profound theological questions about the nature of divine names and the extent to which created beings can participate in divine essence. The careful language used by the Talmudic sages reflects their awareness that they were approaching the very limits of human understanding. The Talmud also preserves traditions about Metatron's role in the transmission of Torah. These passages suggest that the angel who had once been human played a crucial part in ensuring that divine knowledge could be safely transmitted to human consciousness. The complex process of revelation, involving multiple layers of meaning and carefully calibrated disclosure, required an intermediary who understood both divine perfection and human limitation. Metatron's unique background made him ideally suited for this role. The discussions in Tractate Avodah Zarah touch upon Metatron's relationship with the nations of the world, suggesting that his authority extends beyond the Jewish people to encompass all of humanity. These passages indicate that while Metatron has a special relationship with Israel as the chosen people, his role in divine justice and cosmic order affects all human beings. This universal dimension of his authority reflects the broader theological principle that divine justice applies to all creation. The Talmudic treatment of Metatron also addresses the question of prayer and intercession. Several passages suggest that Metatron plays a role in presenting human prayers before the divine throne, serving as an advocate for those who seek divine mercy. This intercessory function adds another layer to his role as mediator between heaven and earth, making him not only a transmitter of divine knowledge, but also a conduit for human supplications. The mystical traditions surrounding Metatron are filled with accounts of visionary experiences that transcend ordinary human consciousness. These visions, recorded by mystics and sages throughout the centuries, provide glimpses into the realm where Metatron serves as the primary intermediary between divine mystery and human understanding. The nature of these encounters reveals the profound spiritual preparation required to receive the knowledge that Metatron guards. The earliest mystical texts describe visions where Metatron appears as a figure of overwhelming luminosity, his form simultaneously human and divine. Those who have been granted such visions speak of an encounter that transforms not only their understanding, but their very being. The light that emanates from Metatron is described as containing within it all the colors of creation, each hue representing a different aspect of divine wisdom. This light does not merely illuminate, it penetrates the soul and reveals truths that cannot be expressed in ordinary language. The process of receiving a vision of Metatron requires extensive spiritual preparation. The mystics who have experienced such encounters describe years of prayer, fasting, and meditation that gradually purify the soul and prepare it for direct contact with divine knowledge. This preparation is not merely disciplinary but transformative, slowly reshaping human consciousness to accommodate truths that would otherwise prove overwhelming or destructive. In these mystical encounters, Metatron often appears as a teacher whose lessons transcend conventional instruction. Rather than simply imparting information, he guides the visionary through direct experiences of divine truth. The mystic may find themselves transported through the heavenly realms, witnessing the operations of divine justice, or experiencing the cosmic significance of human actions. These journeys are not imaginary but represent genuine spiritual experiences that expand the soul's capacity for divine knowledge. The knowledge revealed in these visions often pertains to the hidden meanings within sacred texts. Metatron may reveal the mystical significance of a particular verse, showing how it connects to the broader patterns of divine providence. These revelations demonstrate that the written word contains layers of meaning that become accessible only through direct spiritual experience. The mystic returns from such encounters with a transformed understanding of familiar texts, seeing connections and significance that were previously invisible. Many mystical accounts describe visions where Metatron reveals the cosmic significance of human suffering and redemption. These visions provide insights into the divine plan that encompasses not only individual souls, but the entire course of human history. The mystic is shown how apparent tragedies serve larger purposes, how individual struggles contribute to cosmic healing, and how the ultimate destiny of creation involves the complete revelation of divine justice and mercy. The prophetic dimensions of these visions often include revelations about future events, though these prophecies are typically veiled in symbolic language that requires careful interpretation. Metatron may reveal the spiritual forces that will shape coming ages, the cosmic battles between good and evil that will determine the fate of creation, or the ultimate restoration of divine order that will mark the end of history. These prophetic visions serve not only to inform, but to prepare the mystic for their role in the unfolding divine plan. The mystical literature also records visions where Metatron appears as a guide through the process of spiritual purification. These encounters often involve the symbolic removal of spiritual impurities, the healing of wounds inflicted by sin, and the restoration of the soul's original purity. The mystic experiences these purifications not as abstract concepts, but as vivid spiritual realities that transform their relationship with the divine. Some of the most profound mystical accounts describe visions where Metatron reveals the true nature of divine names and their power. These encounters provide insights into the creative force of divine speech, the way in which divine names shape reality, and the responsibility that comes with knowledge of these sacred formulations. The mystic who receives such revelations understands that they have been entrusted with power that must be used only in accordance with divine will. The process by which Metatron transmits sacred knowledge to human recipients involves carefully orchestrated spiritual experiences that respect both the magnitude of divine truth and the limitations of human consciousness. This transmission is not a simple transfer of information, but a complex spiritual operation that requires the coordination of multiple celestial agencies and the precise preparation of the human recipient. The selection of individuals who will receive direct transmission of sacred knowledge from Metatron follows criteria that transcend ordinary human understanding. Those chosen for such revelations are typically individuals who have demonstrated not only intellectual capacity but spiritual purity, moral integrity, and the ability to bear the weight of divine responsibility. The selection process often involves years of testing, during which the candidate's responses to various spiritual challenges are carefully observed and evaluated. The actual transmission of knowledge occurs through a variety of means, each adapted to the specific nature of the knowledge being conveyed and the capacity of the recipient. Some revelations come through direct visions, where the mystic experiences immediate contact with Metatron in a state of heightened spiritual consciousness. Others are transmitted through dreams that contain layers of symbolic meaning requiring careful interpretation. Still others come through sudden moments of illumination during prayer or meditation, when the barrier between human and divine consciousness temporarily dissolves. The knowledge transmitted through these encounters encompasses several distinct categories, each requiring different levels of spiritual preparation and understanding. The first category includes insights into the hidden meanings of sacred texts, revelations that show how familiar passages contain layers of significance that connect to the broader patterns of divine providence. These revelations often transform the recipient's understanding of Scripture, revealing connections and purposes that were previously invisible. The second category of transmitted knowledge pertains to the operations of divine justice and the cosmic significance of human actions. Recipients of such revelations gain understanding of how individual choices contribute to the broader spiritual evolution of creation, how apparent injustices serve larger purposes, and how the ultimate resolution of all contradictions will reveal the perfect justice of divine providence. This knowledge often comes with a profound sense of responsibility, as the recipient understands their role in the cosmic drama. The third category involves revelations about the nature of the divine realm itself, including the hierarchies of angels, the structure of the heavenly palace, and the operations of the divine court. These revelations provide insights into the cosmic order that governs all existence, showing how the visible world reflects and participates in invisible spiritual realities. Such knowledge often comes with strict warnings about the proper use of this information and the dangers of misapplication. The fourth category encompasses prophetic knowledge about future events, both personal and cosmic. These revelations may include insights into the spiritual evolution of individuals, the destiny of nations, or the ultimate culmination of history in the complete revelation of divine justice. Such prophetic knowledge typically comes veiled in symbolic language that requires careful interpretation and often includes warnings about the conditional nature of prophetic fulfillment. The process of receiving and integrating these transmissions requires ongoing spiritual discipline and guidance. Recipients often describe a period of disorientation following major revelations, as their consciousness adjusts to accommodate new levels of understanding. This integration process may involve changes in prayer practices, alterations in daily routines, or the development of new spiritual disciplines designed to help the recipient properly channel and apply their enhanced understanding. The responsibility that comes with receiving sacred knowledge from Metatron extends beyond personal spiritual development to include obligations toward the broader community. Recipients are typically charged with transmitting portions of their knowledge to others, though this transmission must be carefully calibrated to match the spiritual capacity of each individual recipient. The process of determining what knowledge to share, with whom, and under what circumstances requires ongoing guidance from celestial sources. Throughout the history of prophecy, Metatron has served as the primary intermediary through whom divine knowledge reaches human consciousness. The great prophets of Israel, from Moses through the post-exilic period, received their most profound revelations through encounters with this celestial figure who bridges the gap between divine transcendence and human understanding. These prophetic revelations, recorded in both canonical and mystical texts, provide insights into the methods and purposes of divine communication. The prophetic tradition recognizes that direct divine communication would overwhelm human consciousness, making necessary the mediation of angelic beings who can translate infinite divine knowledge into forms that finite minds can comprehend. Metatron, with his unique background as a transformed human being, possesses the perfect qualifications for this role. His understanding of both human limitation and divine perfection enables him to serve as an effective bridge between these two realms. The revelations that Metatron provides to prophets often come in carefully structured visions that unfold in multiple layers of meaning. The prophet may initially perceive symbolic images that convey immediate messages about contemporary events or spiritual conditions. As the vision develops, deeper layers of meaning emerge, revealing connections to broader patterns of divine providence and ultimate cosmic purposes. This multi-layered structure ensures that the revelation serves both immediate practical needs and long-term spiritual development. The process of prophetic revelation through Metatron typically begins with an intense spiritual experience that lifts the prophet's consciousness beyond ordinary awareness. This elevation is not merely psychological, but represents a genuine participation in higher levels of reality where divine knowledge becomes accessible to human understanding. The prophet enters a state where the boundaries between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness become permeable, allowing for direct reception of divine truth. During these elevated states, Metatron appears to the prophet in forms that are adapted to their particular spiritual capacity and cultural context. The same celestial being may appear as a figure of overwhelming light to one prophet, as a familiar human form to another, or as a voice speaking from within the prophet's own consciousness. These varied manifestations reflect not inconsistency, but rather the careful adaptation of divine communication to human receptivity. The content of prophetic revelations received through Metatron encompasses several distinct categories. Historical prophecies provide insights into the spiritual significance of contemporary events, showing how apparent political or social developments serve larger divine purposes. These revelations help prophets understand their role in guiding their communities through specific challenges and opportunities. Moral prophecies focus on the ethical implications of individual and collective behavior, revealing how human choices contribute to or detract from the cosmic balance between good and evil. These revelations often include specific guidance for addressing moral challenges within the community, providing practical wisdom for applying divine principles to complex human situations. Mystical prophecies reveal deeper truths about the nature of divine reality and the ultimate destiny of creation. These revelations often transcend immediate practical applications, providing insights into the cosmic order that governs all existence. Such prophecies may include visions of the divine throne, revelations about angelic hierarchies, or insights into the ultimate resolution of the cosmic drama between good and evil. Messianic prophecies reveal aspects of the divine plan for ultimate redemption, showing how current events participate in larger patterns that will culminate in the complete restoration of divine order. These revelations provide hope during times of suffering and guidance for participating in the cosmic process of spiritual evolution. The prophets who receive these revelations from Metatron are charged with the responsibility of transmitting them to their communities in forms that can be understood and applied. This transmission process requires careful discernment about what aspects of the revelation to share publicly, what to preserve for smaller circles of disciples, and what to maintain as personal spiritual knowledge. The prophet must also determine the appropriate timing for sharing different aspects of their revelations. Within the mystical tradition, Metatron holds the unique responsibility of guarding the sacred names of God, those powerful formulations of divine essence that contain within them the creative and transformative power of divine speech. This guardianship represents one of the most sensitive aspects of his celestial role, as the divine names represent direct channels of divine power that must be protected from misuse while remaining accessible to those who have earned the right to employ them. The concept of divine names in Jewish mysticism extends far beyond simple appellations or titles. These names represent actual aspects of divine essence, each containing specific qualities and powers that reflect different dimensions of divine activity in creation. The proper pronunciation and application of these names can effect genuine changes in both spiritual and material reality, making their protection a matter of cosmic significance. Metatron's role as guardian of these names flows naturally from his position as the angel closest to the divine throne and his unique background as a transformed human being. His proximity to divine essence grants him intimate knowledge of the names and their proper applications, while his human origins provide him with understanding of the temptations and limitations that might lead to their misuse by mortal recipients. The transmission of divine names through Metatron follows strict protocols that ensure only properly prepared individuals receive this knowledge. The process begins with extensive spiritual purification, during which the candidate demonstrates not only intellectual capacity, but moral integrity and spiritual maturity. This preparation may extend over many years, involving rigorous discipline in prayer, meditation, ethical conduct, and service to others. The actual revelation of divine names typically occurs through direct mystical experience rather than ordinary instruction. The recipient may experience visions in which Metatron appears as a figure of overwhelming luminosity, speaking the sacred names in ways that imprint them directly upon the soul. These experiences are often accompanied by profound spiritual transformations that prepare the recipient for the responsibilities that come with such knowledge. The power contained within the divine names encompasses several distinct categories of spiritual activity. Creative names contain the power to bring new realities into existence, reflecting the divine creative word that spoke the universe into being. These names must be used only in alignment with divine will and for purposes that serve the broader cosmic good. Their misuse can result in spiritual catastrophe for both the practitioner and the broader community. Healing names contain the power to restore spiritual and physical wholeness, addressing the fundamental causes of illness and dysfunction that stem from separation from divine harmony. The proper application of these names requires not only technical knowledge, but deep compassion and understanding of the spiritual roots of suffering. Those who receive such names are charged with using them in service to others rather than for personal gain. Protective names provide defense against spiritual dangers and negative forces that oppose the divine plan. These names create barriers against evil influences while opening channels for positive spiritual energy. Their use requires careful discernment about when protection is necessary and what forms of spiritual opposition are being encountered. Transformative names contain the power to effect fundamental changes in consciousness and spiritual condition. These names can accelerate spiritual development, remove spiritual obstacles, and facilitate direct experience of divine truth. Their application requires careful attention to the readiness of the recipient and the appropriate timing for spiritual advancement. The responsibility of guarding these names also involves teaching their proper pronunciation and application. The mystical tradition recognizes that the divine names must be spoken with precise articulation and proper spiritual intention to achieve their intended effects. Incorrect pronunciation or improper motivation can not only render the names ineffective, but can also result in spiritual harm to the practitioner. Metatron's instruction in the use of divine names often occurs through a process of gradual revelation, where the student receives increasing levels of knowledge as they demonstrate readiness for greater responsibility. This progressive disclosure ensures that the student develops the spiritual maturity necessary to handle more powerful aspects of the divine names while preventing the premature revelation of knowledge that could prove dangerous. The role of Metatron as the cosmic scribe represents one of the most fundamental aspects of his celestial function, embodying the divine principle that all actions, thoughts, and intentions are permanently recorded in the spiritual realm. This recording function transcends mere documentation. It represents the cosmic mechanism through which divine justice operates, ensuring that every deed receives its appropriate spiritual consequence, and that the ultimate balance of creation is maintained. The concept of celestial record-keeping in the mystical tradition reflects the understanding that physical reality is merely the visible manifestation of spiritual processes that operate according to precise divine laws. Every human action creates spiritual reverberations that extend far beyond its immediate physical effects, contributing to the cosmic balance between good and evil that will ultimately determine the fate of creation. Metatron's function as cosmic scribe involves the maintenance of multiple interconnected records that together form a complete spiritual accounting of creation. The primary record consists of individual human deeds, each action being recorded not only in its external manifestation, but in its spiritual significance and motivational foundation. This record reflects the understanding that divine justice evaluates not merely actions, but the intentions and circumstances that give them meaning. The process of recording human deeds involves sophisticated spiritual mechanisms that capture the multidimensional nature of human action. Physical deeds are recorded along with their emotional context, intellectual foundation, and spiritual significance. A single act of charity, for example, might be recorded differently depending on whether it flows from genuine compassion, social obligation, or desire for recognition. The spiritual weight of the action varies according to these internal factors. The recording of speech occupies a special category within Metatron's scribal function, reflecting the mystical understanding that words carry creative power that mirrors the divine creative word. Every word spoken creates spiritual realities that persist beyond their audible manifestation. Words of blessing, prayer, and spiritual instruction create positive spiritual forces, while words of curse, slander, and deception generate negative spiritual consequences that must eventually be addressed. The documentation of thoughts and intentions represents perhaps the most complex aspect of Metatron's recording function. The mystical tradition recognizes that thoughts are not merely private mental events, but spiritual realities that contribute to the cosmic balance. Pure thoughts generate positive spiritual energy that benefits not only the individual, but the broader cosmic order, while impure thoughts create spiritual pollution that requires eventual purification. The records maintained by Metatron also include the spiritual development of individual souls, tracking their progress through various levels of purification and enlightenment. This record serves not only as a basis for divine judgment, but as a guide for determining what spiritual experiences and challenges each soul requires for continued growth. The careful documentation of spiritual progress ensures that each soul receives exactly the experiences necessary for its ultimate perfection. The interconnection between individual records and cosmic patterns represents another crucial aspect of Metatron's scribal function. Individual deeds do not exist in isolation, but contribute to larger spiritual currents that shape the destiny of communities, nations, and ultimately all creation. The cosmic scribe maintains awareness of these connections, ensuring that individual spiritual development serves the broader divine plan for cosmic redemption. The timing of spiritual consequences represents a complex aspect of the divine record that requires careful coordination between individual spiritual development and cosmic purposes. Actions may receive immediate spiritual consequences, or their effects may be delayed until circumstances allow for their proper resolution. Metatron's records include not only what has occurred, but when and how spiritual consequences will manifest. The accessibility of these records to other spiritual beings reflects the collaborative nature of divine administration. Angels charged with guiding individual souls may consult the records to understand what experiences and challenges their charges require. Higher angels involved in cosmic governance may access broader patterns within the records to understand the spiritual currents that shape historical events. Beyond his roles as scribe and guardian of sacred knowledge, Metatron serves as the primary interpreter of divine will, for those who seek to understand the spiritual significance of their experiences and the divine purpose behind earthly events. This interpretive function requires not only access to divine knowledge, but the ability to translate infinite divine wisdom into forms that finite human consciousness can comprehend and apply. The process of interpreting divine will involves multiple layers of understanding that must be carefully coordinated to provide complete and accurate guidance. The immediate practical implications of divine will must be understood and communicated in ways that provide clear guidance for specific situations. Simultaneously, the broader spiritual significance must be revealed in ways that help individuals understand their role in the larger cosmic drama. Metatron's unique qualifications for this interpretive role stem from his comprehensive understanding of both divine perfection and human limitation. His experience as a human being provides him with intimate knowledge of the challenges, temptations, and limitations that shape human decision-making. His transformation into an angelic being grants him access to divine perspectives that transcend these limitations while maintaining compassion for those who still struggle with them. The interpretation of divine will often involves revealing the spiritual significance of apparently mundane events. What appears to human perception as random occurrence or natural causation may actually represent the manifestation of divine providence working through natural processes to achieve specific spiritual purposes. Metatron's interpretive function helps individuals recognize these divine operations and respond appropriately to the opportunities they present. The mystical tradition records numerous instances where Metatron has provided interpretive guidance to individuals facing complex moral or spiritual decisions. These interpretations typically involve showing how different possible choices align with or contradict divine purposes, helping the individual understand not only what they should do, but why particular actions serve the broader cosmic good. The interpretation of suffering represents one of the most challenging aspects of Metatron's role as interpreter of divine will. Human beings naturally struggle to understand how pain, loss, and injustice can serve divine purposes, especially when these experiences affect the innocent or righteous. Metatron's interpretive guidance in these situations often reveals how apparent tragedies serve larger purposes of spiritual purification, cosmic justice, or the ultimate revelation of divine mercy. The collective dimension of divine will interpretation involves helping communities understand their role in the broader patterns of spiritual evolution. Nations, religious communities, and other collective entities have spiritual destinies that transcend the sum of their individual members' purposes. Metatron's interpretive guidance helps these communities understand their collective calling and the spiritual significance of their historical experiences. The prophetic dimension of interpreting divine will involves revealing how current events participate in larger patterns that extend into the future. This prophetic interpretation helps individuals and communities prepare for coming challenges and opportunities while understanding their role in the unfolding divine plan. Such interpretations often come veiled in symbolic language that requires careful study and meditation to fully comprehend. The personal dimension of divine will interpretation involves helping individuals understand their unique spiritual calling and the specific path of development that will lead them to spiritual fulfillment. This personal guidance takes into account the individual's spiritual history, current circumstances, and ultimate destiny, providing customized direction that serves both personal development and cosmic purposes. In the cosmic architecture of creation, Metatron serves as the essential bridge between the realm of pure divine spirit and the world of material manifestation. This bridging function represents far more than simple mediation. It involves the active translation of divine energy into forms that can operate within the constraints of physical reality while maintaining their essential spiritual character. The metaphysical foundation of Metatron's bridging function rests upon his unique nature as a being who has experienced both human and angelic existence. This dual experience grants him intimate knowledge of both realms and the ability to facilitate communication and energy transfer between them. His human origins provide him with understanding of material limitations and the challenges of spiritual development within physical constraints. His angelic transformation grants him access to spiritual powers and perspectives that transcend these limitations. The process of bridging between worlds involves multiple simultaneous operations that must be carefully coordinated to maintain both the integrity of divine energy and the stability of material reality. Divine energy in its pure form would overwhelm and destroy physical structures, making necessary a complex process of modulation and adaptation that preserves the essential power while making it accessible to material beings. The transmission of divine knowledge through Metatron's bridging function involves similar processes of adaptation and modulation. Pure divine knowledge exists in forms that transcend human conceptual categories, requiring translation into symbolic, linguistic, and experiential forms that human consciousness can process. This translation process must preserve the essential content while making it accessible to finite understanding. The healing dimension of Metatron's bridging function involves channeling divine healing energy into forms that can address both spiritual and physical ailments. This healing energy operates simultaneously on multiple levels, addressing the spiritual causes of illness, while providing practical relief for physical symptoms. The bridging function ensures that divine healing power reaches those who need it in forms they can receive and integrate. The protective aspect of bridging between worlds involves creating barriers that prevent negative spiritual forces from infiltrating material reality while ensuring that positive spiritual influences can operate freely. This protective function requires constant vigilance and adjustment as conditions in both realms change and evolve. The transformative dimension of Metatron's bridging function involves facilitating the spiritual evolution of material beings toward higher levels of consciousness and divine connection. This transformation process must respect the natural pace of spiritual development while providing the energy and guidance necessary for continued growth. The prophetic aspect of bridging between worlds involves revealing how spiritual causes operating in the divine realm will manifest as physical effects in material reality. This prophetic function helps individuals and communities prepare for coming changes while understanding their spiritual significance. The ultimate purpose of Metatron's bridging function is to facilitate the eventual complete integration of divine and material reality that will mark the culmination of the cosmic evolutionary process. This integration will not involve the destruction of either realm, but their perfect harmonization in a state where divine will operate freely through material manifestation without constraint or distortion. The responsibility that comes with serving as a bridge between worlds involves maintaining perfect balance and alignment with divine will, while serving the genuine needs of material beings. This responsibility requires constant attention to both divine purposes and human limitations, ensuring that the bridging function serves the ultimate goal of cosmic redemption while providing practical assistance for immediate needs. Throughout the vast expanse of cosmic history, from the first moments of creation to the ultimate fulfillment of divine purpose, Metatron stands as the eternal witness who observes, records, and preserves the complete record of spiritual evolution. This witnessing function transcends mere observation. It represents active participation in the cosmic process through which divine purpose unfolds across time and space. The scope of Metatron's witnessing encompasses not only the grand movements of cosmic history, but the intimate details of individual spiritual development. Every moment of progress, every struggle with temptation, every act of kindness or cruelty, every prayer offered in faith or doubt, all are witnessed and preserved in the eternal record that Metatron maintains. This eternal witnessing serves multiple cosmic purposes that extend far beyond simple record-keeping. The preservation of complete spiritual history ensures that nothing of genuine significance is lost or forgotten, that every contribution to the cosmic good is acknowledged and rewarded, and that every deviation from divine purpose is properly addressed. The witnessing function also serves as a source of hope and encouragement for those who struggle with doubt about the ultimate meaning and purpose of their existence. The knowledge that every sincere effort towards spiritual growth is witnessed and valued by the cosmic order provides motivation for continued development, even during periods of apparent failure or stagnation. The judicial dimension of eternal witnessing involves providing complete and accurate testimony for the divine court that will ultimately evaluate the spiritual significance of all creation. This testimony will ensure that divine justice operates with perfect knowledge of all relevant facts and circumstances, taking into account not only actions but intentions, circumstances, and the full context of spiritual development. The commemorative aspect of eternal witnessing involves preserving the memory of those who have made significant contributions to the cosmic good. This preservation ensures that the sacrifices and achievements of the righteous will be remembered and honored throughout eternity, serving as inspiration for future generations of spiritual seekers. The teaching dimension of eternal witnessing involves using the preserved record of spiritual history to provide guidance and instruction for those who face similar challenges. The complete record of how others have navigated spiritual difficulties provides a vast resource for helping current seekers understand their options and choose the path that leads to spiritual fulfillment. As the eternal witness, Metatron embodies the divine promise that nothing of genuine spiritual value will be lost or forgotten, that every sincere effort toward spiritual growth contributes to the ultimate cosmic good, and that the complete story of spiritual evolution will ultimately reveal the perfect justice and mercy of divine providence. In the profound depths of mystical Judaism, where the seen and unseen worlds converge, stands one of the most enigmatic and powerful symbols known to spiritual seekers throughout the ages, Metatron's cube. This sacred geometric form, bearing the name of the great archangel who once walked among men as Enoch, represents far more than mere mathematical precision. It embodies the very blueprint of creation itself, the divine template through which the Almighty structured the universe and continues to sustain all existence. The cube that bears Metatron's name is no ordinary geometric figure. It is a complex mandala of intersecting lines and circles that contains within its structure the 5 Platonic solids, the fundamental building blocks of physical reality according to ancient wisdom. These perfect three-dimensional forms, the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron, were understood by the mystics to represent the elements of fire, earth, air, ether, and water, respectively. Within Metatron's cube, these forms exist in perfect harmony, demonstrating how the divine consciousness manifests through geometric principles to create the material world. The significance of this sacred geometry extends far beyond mathematical curiosity. For the Kabbalists and mystical practitioners who have studied these patterns for millennia, Metatron's cube represents the divine map of creation, the very method by which God's infinite light becomes finite form. Each line, each intersection, each perfect angle speaks to the precision and intentionality with which the Creator has fashioned our reality. It is said that to meditate upon this figure is to glimpse the mind of God itself, to understand something of the divine logic that underlies all existence. Within the rich tapestry of Kabbalistic wisdom, Metatron occupies a position of unparalleled significance. The Kabbalah, that mystical branch of Jewish thought that seeks to understand the hidden aspects of divine reality, places Metatron at the very threshold between the infinite Ein Sof and the manifest world of the Sephirot. He is understood to be the angel who mediates between the utterly transcendent nature of God and the structured, accessible reality that human consciousness can begin to comprehend. The Kabbalistic texts speak of Metatron as the youth, or Nar, a title that seems paradoxical given his supreme authority in the celestial hierarchy. Yet this designation carries profound meaning within the context of mystical Judaism. The youth represents the aspect of divine consciousness that is closest to creation, the most accessible face of the infinite. Just as a young person stands at the threshold between childhood and maturity, Metatron stands at the threshold between the unknowable essence of God and the structured reality of the created worlds. In the Zohar, that foundational text of Kabbalistic wisdom, Metatron is described as the one who wears the garments of the divine name. This mystical clothing represents his unique role as the being through whom the divine will is transmitted to the lower worlds. The Zohar teaches that when God desires to communicate with creation, it is through Metatron that this communication flows. He is the divine messenger par excellence, not merely carrying messages from God, but actually embodying the divine word itself. The Kabbalists understood that Metatron's transformation from the mortal Enoch represented something far more profound than the elevation of a single righteous individual. It symbolized the potential for human consciousness itself to transcend its limitations and achieve unity with the divine. Enoch's ascension and transformation into Metatron demonstrated that the barrier between human and divine, while real, is not insurmountable. Through righteousness, devotion, and mystical practice, the human soul can rise to heights that seem impossible from our earthly perspective. This understanding profoundly shaped Kabbalistic practice and aspiration. The figure of Metatron became a beacon of hope for mystics who sought their own spiritual transformation. If Enoch, a mortal man, could become the supreme angel, then surely every soul contains within it the potential for divine realization. This belief motivated countless generations of Kabbalists in their pursuit of mystical knowledge and spiritual perfection. The Kabbalistic conception of Metatron also encompasses his role as the supreme teacher of mystical wisdom. According to tradition, it was Metatron who revealed the secrets of the Kabbalah to the early masters of this tradition. The complex system of the Sephirot, the understanding of divine emanation, and the practices of mystical ascent were all transmitted through his guidance. This makes him not merely an object of study within Kabbalistic tradition, but the very source of that tradition's most profound teachings. The Tree of Life stands as perhaps the most central and comprehensive symbol in all of Kabbalistic teaching. This cosmic diagram, with its 10 Sephirot connected by 22 paths, represents nothing less than the complete structure of reality, from the highest divine emanations to the lowest material manifestations. And at the apex of this magnificent structure, governing its highest emanation and serving as the channel through which divine light flows to all lower levels, stands Metatron. To understand Metatron's connection to the Tree of Life, one must first grasp the profound nature of this mystical diagram. The tree is not merely a symbolic representation, but rather a living map of how divine consciousness manifests itself throughout creation. Each sephira represents a different aspect of divine emanation, a different way in which the infinite light of Ein Sof expresses itself in finite form. The paths that connect these Sephirot represent the flow of divine energy and consciousness between these various aspects of the divine nature. At the crown of this tree stands Keter, the first and highest of the Sephirot, representing the divine will in its purest form. It is here that Metatron is most intimately connected to the Tree of Life. As the angel who stands closest to the divine throne, who alone among created beings can look upon the face of God, Metatron serves as the guardian and administrator of Keter. He is the one through whom the initial impulse of divine will flows down through the entire structure of the tree. This positioning of Metatron at the crown of the Tree of Life carries profound implications for understanding his cosmic role. Keter represents the initial stirring of divine consciousness toward creation, the first movement from absolute unity toward multiplicity. It is the bridge between Ein Sof, the infinite and utterly transcendent aspect of God, and the structured reality of the Sephirot. Metatron, as the guardian of Keter, thus serves as the ultimate mediator between the infinite and the finite, the unknowable and the knowable. The Kabbalistic texts describe how divine light flows down through the Tree of Life in a process called emanation. This is not creation ex nihilo, but rather a process by which the infinite divine light gradually constricts and structures itself to allow for the existence of finite beings and material reality. Each sephira represents a further step in this process of divine self-limitation and self-expression. And overseeing this entire process, ensuring that the divine light flows properly through each level while maintaining its essential purity, is Metatron. The Tree of Life also reveals the intimate connection between Metatron and the process of human spiritual development. Just as divine light flows down through the tree in the process of creation, So too can human consciousness ascend the tree in the process of spiritual realization. The mystic who seeks to return to unity with the divine must traverse each level of the tree, integrating and transcending each sephira until they reach Keter itself. And it is Metatron who guides this ascent, serving as the ultimate teacher and protector of those who undertake this sacred journey. This ascending path is not merely theoretical, but represents a practical map for mystical practice. Each sephira corresponds to different aspects of human consciousness and experience, and the mystic must do the necessary work to purify and elevate each aspect. The emotional nature must be refined through the sephirot of Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet. The intellectual nature must be purified through Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. And finally, the mystic must transcend even the highest forms of individual consciousness to achieve unity with Keter through the grace and guidance of Metatron. The relationship between Metatron's cube and the Tree of Life reveals one of the most profound teachings of Kabbalistic wisdom, that spiritual reality and geometric reality are not separate domains, but different aspects of a single, unified divine order. The same principles that govern the structure of Metatron's cube also govern the emanation of the Sephirot down the Tree of Life. Both represent the divine method of creating order and structure within the infinite expanse of divine consciousness. When we examine Metatron's cube closely, we discover that its 13 circles represent the 13 attributes of divine mercy mentioned in the Torah. These attributes, compassion, grace, patience, loving-kindness, truth, and others, are not merely abstract qualities, but living forces that shape the nature of reality itself. The geometric relationships within the cube reveal how these divine attributes interact and combine to create the complex harmony of creation. The lines that connect these 13 circles in Metatron's cube correspond to the paths between the Sephirot on the Tree of Life. Just as the paths on the tree represent the flow of divine energy between different aspects of divine emanation, so too do the lines in the cube represent the flow of divine consciousness through the various attributes of divine mercy. This geometric mapping reveals that the structure of reality follows precise mathematical principles, that the divine mind operates according to laws of harmony and proportion that can be expressed through sacred geometry. This understanding has profound implications for how we comprehend the nature of creation itself. It suggests that the physical universe, with all its mathematical laws and geometric relationships, is not separate from the spiritual universe, but is rather its direct expression. The same divine intelligence that structured the Tree of Life and created Metatron's cube also established the laws of physics, the principles of chemistry, and the patterns of biological growth. All of these are different manifestations of a single underlying divine order. The presence of the 5 Platonic solids within Metatron's cube provides further confirmation of this principle. These perfect geometric forms, which Plato and other ancient philosophers recognized as the fundamental building blocks of physical reality, are contained within the structure that bears the name of the Supreme Angel. This suggests that Metatron's role extends beyond the purely spiritual realm into the very foundations of material existence. As the guardian of divine order, he oversees not only the spiritual evolution of consciousness, but also the physical evolution of the cosmos. Central to understanding Metatron's cube is the significance of its 13 circles, each representing one of the 13 attributes of divine mercy revealed to Moses on Mount Sinai. These attributes, found in Exodus 34:6-7, are considered among the most sacred formulations in all of Jewish tradition. They represent the essential qualities through which God relates to creation, the fundamental characteristics of divine love and compassion that make existence itself possible. The first circle represents the attribute of divine compassion, rachem, the womb-like love that God has for all creation. This is the love that brings beings into existence and sustains them throughout their journey. The second circle represents divine grace, the unmerited favor that God shows to all creatures, regardless of their spiritual development. The third represents patience, erekapayim, the divine willingness to allow beings the time they need for growth and transformation. As we continue around the cube, each subsequent circle represents another aspect of divine mercy, loving kindness, truth, forgiveness, justice tempered with mercy, the bearing of iniquity, the pardoning of transgression, the forgiving of sin, the cleansing of guilt, and the visitation of consequences that lead to repentance and growth. The final, 13th attribute encompasses all the others, representing the divine commitment to maintain relationship with creation despite all obstacles and failures. These 13 attributes are not merely abstract theological concepts, but living forces that actively shape the nature of reality. Each circle in Metatron's cube pulsates with the energy of its corresponding divine attribute, and the lines that connect them represent the dynamic interplay between these forces. When we meditate upon the cube, we are not simply contemplating a geometric form, but engaging with the very qualities that define God's relationship with creation. The positioning of these 13 circles within the cube also reveals important truths about the nature of divine mercy. They are arranged in perfect geometric harmony, demonstrating that divine love is not chaotic or arbitrary, but follows principles of order and beauty. The symmetry of their arrangement shows that all aspects of divine mercy work together in perfect coordination, that there is no conflict or contradiction within the divine nature. This geometric perfection of the 13 circles also serves as a model for human spiritual development. Just as these divine attributes exist in perfect harmony within Metatron's cube, so too must the mystic work to develop and harmonize these same qualities within their own soul. The person who seeks to approach the divine must cultivate compassion, grace, patience, loving kindness, truthfulness, forgiveness, and all the other divine attributes within their own being. Within the complex structure of Metatron's cube, the 5 Platonic solids emerge as three-dimensional forms of perfect geometric beauty. These solids, the tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, icosahedron, and dodecahedron, were recognized by ancient philosophers as the fundamental shapes underlying all physical reality. Their presence within Metatron's cube reveals the profound connection between angelic consciousness and the very foundations of material existence. The tetrahedron, with its 4 triangular faces, represents the element of fire. Its sharp points and dynamic geometry embody the penetrating, transformative quality of divine fire that purifies and illuminates. Within the spiritual context of Metatron's cube, the tetrahedron represents the fire of divine love that burns away all impurities and reveals the true nature of reality. This is the fire that transformed Enoch into Metatron, the consuming flame of divine presence that elevates mortal consciousness to angelic heights. The cube, with its 6 square faces, represents the element of earth. Its stability and solidity embody the reliable, enduring quality of divine faithfulness. Within Metatron's cube, this form represents the firm foundation of divine truth upon which all spiritual development must be built. It reminds us that while mystical experience may involve transcendent flights of consciousness, it must always be grounded in the solid reality of divine law and moral principle. The octahedron, with its 8 triangular faces, represents the element of air. Its light, airy structure embodies the quality of divine breath that gives life to all creatures. This is the breath of God that animated Adam in the Garden of Eden, the same breath that inspired the prophets and sustains all living beings. Within Metatron's cube, the octahedron represents the divine inspiration that guides human consciousness toward truth and understanding. The icosahedron, with its 20 triangular faces, represents the element of water. Its fluid, adaptable geometry embodies the flowing quality of divine grace that reaches into every corner of creation. This is the water of life that flows from the throne of God, the cleansing stream that purifies the soul and makes possible spiritual rebirth. Within Metatron's cube, the icosahedron represents the adaptive, nurturing aspect of divine love that meets each soul where it is and provides exactly what is needed for growth. The dodecahedron, with its 12 pentagonal faces, represents the element of ether or spirit. Its complex, beautiful structure embodies the quintessential quality that unifies and transcends all other elements. This is the divine spirit that pervades and animates all of creation, the unifying consciousness that makes all existence one. Within Metatron's cube, the dodecahedron represents the ultimate goal of mystical practice, union with the divine spirit that is the source and destiny of all souls. The interplay between these 5 solids within Metatron's cube reveals important truths about the nature of creation and spiritual development. They are not separate, competing elements, but complementary aspects of a unified divine order. Fire provides the energy for transformation, earth provides the stability for growth, air provides the inspiration for understanding, water provides the flexibility